Goose. When you get a chance, let me know if I fixed it. I think I did. And you're my hero. Good morning, Ken. Good morning, Randy. We worship the heavens, the stars, the seas. We knew the truth before their decrees. At Sinai, the men left us behind, abandoning women, blind leading the blind. We kept the fire as they climbed higher. Sometimes they get mad listening to this. But no God, no man can silence her voice. We denounce the lies. It is man's guilt and man that needs saved. Sisters, rise up. We hold the power. It's time they bow. Without the glory, there's no guilt to bear. If sin is owned, man holds the deed. May the record show no woman signed. Because the truth is, sin's name is man. Yes, I do. Sin's name is man. That's a weird thing to say. You know what, Kayla? You know what we hear when you say that? We hear fuck you. So fuck you too, okay? Have a good day.
Men didn't have the nerve to name you, not with truth, not with blood on their hands.
Good morning, 3 Pips.
They spoke around you over.
If you are friendly and you would like to come up and hang out today, the guest box is open. And Kayla, you're saying fuck you, and I'm saying fuck you back, okay? Good to know. It is a curse. To pray for somebody to your God is cursing them. You wouldn't like it if I did a satanic ritual using your name. You wouldn't like it if I cast a spell on you. You're sad and pitiful. You don't understand consent, you don't understand boundaries, and you don't understand that the world doesn't revolve around you and your silly little fictional God. Sorry, everything isn't about you, pumpkin. You saw, prophecy. You saw it.
The story's been told for generations, passed along from voice to ear. I called you the God who sees, but it's not how it appears. Like a game of telephone that traveled, every telling changed the view. Each preaching made it softer, each repeat a little more askew. You saw it. Far from my home, isolated, afraid, a body alone in a borrowed land. You saw me doing what I had to do, trying to obey their every command. You saw the cruelty, saw it plain, saw it hand me over like a toy. You saw what was taken again and again. You saw my body and heart destroyed. I ran when escape came into view. Believe distance might set me. They heard it as something kind. They said you saw my heart, said it was part of your design. It was never meant to compliment. I named you the God who sees. There was always an indictment. You see it all and do nothing. You see the children, you see their pain, their hunger, their bruises, their abuse. You see the men who harm them while claiming they worship you. You see global wars, you see the suffering. You see it all from your throne and do nothing. You saw it, 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 you saw it. I didn't name you by accident. I didn't kneel, I didn't plead. I gave you a name that fit. I named you the God who sees. You saw it, 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 you are the God who sees. You saw it, you saw it, you saw it.
That was my album Ex Parte. It is out everywhere you listen to music. I know, right? Grandma Xana. It is actually one of my favorite songs I've written. I love it so much. I don't know. I love going through the scripture now with new glasses, if you will, and getting rid of those blood-stained glasses I had, as Joel puts it, and just listening for these voices for the first time, you know. If you are friendly and you want to come up and hang out, the guest box is open. It is only open to friendlies because today is Non-Believers Bible Study, and today we are starting in, oops, that's not what I want. And yes, I have my little chat GPT open for us to ask it questions. I also have the Oxford Companion to the Bible here if we need to look things up. And I have somewhere I have my Jewish Study Bible. Do you want to hear Abelina Ballerina real quick, Randy? We could do that before I get started because I'd like to get a few more people in here. Let me go find her. Let me go find Abelina. Nope. That's not what I want. I want the album. Why are you taking me? Why are you taking me here? Okay, I'll search for it, I guess. All right, here we go. Hey, Eddie's World, how are you? Hey, Tahir, welcome in.
Abelina ballerina, spinning in her tutu. All the world's a stage, lacing up her ballet shoes. Abelina ballerina, they applaud as you dance. You're so precious, little angel. Dance away if you can. Abelina ballerina, wooden floor counting time. In the mirror she's a swan, arabesque in pink tights. Abelina ballerina, sitting still in a pew. Preacher says that light you feel doesn't really come from you. They tell her every step is borrowed, her plie heaven sent. And for every bow she's taken, she's got something to repent. Abelina ballerina, stand still, don't twirl, it's your fault if they're not holy, so be a good little girl. Abelina ballerina, preacher says let us pray, closes the door so no one hears, calls it a special game. He says this is guidance, says she's holy, full of grace, claims God needs her silence, blessed are those that obey. Abelina ballerina, the light has left her eyes, she no longer hears the music and her steps are out of time. Abelina ballerina, every dime. Abelina ballerina learns what judgment cost, learns who gets forgiven
Hi, Fox.
and who pays the loss. Abelina ballerina learns to mother through the ache, learns that love can still be sacred even after what they take. She devours her education and her eyes begin to shine. Music pours out from within her and her steps fall back in time. She reads the words they cherry-picked, preaches truth they try to hide. She interrogates the God, she uncovers every lie. She shows why nothing ever changes, who the system benefits. Men of God who feed on power, abuse, shame, and the grift. Abelina ballerina, show me how you twirl, spinning in the sunlight, dancing with your little girl. Abelina ballerina, dancing center stage again. Abelina ballerina, dancing barefoot in the sun. You're so precious, little angel, and your dance has just begun.
Good morning, everybody. If you are friendly and you want to come up, the guest box is open. We're going to do non-believers Bible study. We're going to start that right now. And then after we are done with the first 3 chapters of Deuteronomy today, we are going to go. Thank you, Randy. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. The song is Abelina Ballerina. It is from my album Ex Parte, and it is available everywhere you listen to music. Also, don't forget, you can also listen to my podcast with all my Auntie Sermons on every place you stream podcasts. And the podcast is called Auntie Sermons, AUNTIE. And this week, I dropped one about consent. And so the song Consent is actually in the podcast. So you should check that out. It's a really great episode. We're going to dig into Deuteronomy right now. Again, if you're friendly, you want to come up and hang out. Hey, Deborah, good to see you. Come on up, hang out with me. I hate talking to myself. Somebody please save me. If not, I'm going to go ahead and dig in. And then after the Bible study, hang out a little bit longer because, yeah, we're in Deuteronomy now. What? We're in Deuteronomy.
Hello. Hang on one second.
Hey, Deborah. Hey, Eddies.
Well, hello.
It's so good to have you up here.
Yeah, I constantly am following you in comments. That it's always so funny. I always love it because a lot of people always put an L in my name, and it's just Ed is word. Like,
Oh, I always say Eddies. Ed is word. That's funny. Well, at least I get it that it was, not an L, right?
yeah,
Come
exactly.
on,
Yeah.
Casey.
Either way, hope everybody's
Like
doing
Katie
good.
Watson.
Just can't wait for today's episode, man. I love listening to you, so it's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Deborah, are you at work right now?
I just went out to my car for a few minutes.
Okay. You pop in whenever you want, like say whatever you want, interrupt me, and because I know you have limited time, okay?
That's okay. Thanks. I have good news.
Okay.
My album just
What?
came out.
It did? It dropped?
Yes, it dropped.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. Okay, what is the name of your album? I want to write it down. Okay, what
20
is it?
Titans.
20 Titans. Oh my God, you guys have to listen to Deborah's music. It's amazing. Good
Now,
morning,
You're
Robot
going
Goat.
to get the first scoop of why the title is what it is.
Okay. Why is
Okay. So in Roman numerals, 20 is represented by 2 X's.
Uh-huh.
2 X's is also the chromosomes of a woman.
I like that.
So we women are Titans.
I really like that. That's fucking true. Oh my God, I love that. Oh, you're so
there's
amazing.
the scoop.
I love that so much, you guys. I love that so much. Okay, that's amazing. We do a lot of work trying to dismantle this patriarchy, and we need to remember that we're fucking titans, man.
We are. And there's a lot of songs
Vox,
in there
I
that
don't know
represent.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Vox is in my guest box, and I don't know you, so I don't know if you're friendly or not. So I can't bring you
Vox?
up. I don't know you yet.
I think
is Vox a friend?
is. I think so. Not 100%.
Okay, well, Vox needs
so.
to let me know. Because this is non-believers for right now. Yeah. Well, I'm going to dig into Deuteronomy, and as I'm reading, if there's anything you want to tell me, Deborah, let me know. If we have questions, Ed, let me know.
Well, I was going to ask
just
you,
one.
do you have
just
like,
one more thing
moment to,
if I could, before I go on mute and then go back to my
first
office?
Deborah, and then go. Okay, Deborah, go ahead.
Yes, it is on Spotify. It's going to, if it's not already, it's going to be on Pandora, YouTube Music, iTunes. I went through Amuse, and it just sends it out to all the places that accept that type of music. So
that's awesome.
Last I heard, it was like 25 different platforms. So it should be pretty much on any streaming platform that you have. And then I'm going to go on mute. I'm going to go back in my office. I'm going to listen. If I can pipe up, I will. But love you so much.
I love you too, Deborah. Thanks so much for coming up. You guys check out, make sure you're following Deborah Grace, the amazing author of Crucifying the Bible. Even though Crystal always wants to call it resurrecting the Bible, for some reason it's actually crucifying. It is not resurrecting. Okay.
I love your music too.
Thanks, Deborah. Have a great day. All right, you guys, we're going to dig in.
Also, thank you to everybody who like validated me. By the way, I am super friendly. I'm sorry you don't know me, but yeah, no,
that's
like
okay.
I'm just super friendly.
And the problem is that when believers see that I'm doing non-believers Bible study, they like to come up and cuss me out, and they pretend that they're a non-believer, and then they'll jump up here and they'll be like, lots of bad words at me, and I cuss, but like just to come up to cuss me out, that's not okay.
No, that's not okay. You're trying to do what you do, and honestly, I appreciate it. Because, like, honestly, you have made my morning already. Just, like, hearing, like, the music that you're playing and the way that you go about you make my day better. So, honestly, that is not what I'm trying to do at all. So, yeah, like I said...
So here's how we do this. I'm going to read a paragraph. We can discuss it. If anybody has questions and they want me to look up, we like to look at the actual Hebrew, the rabbinic teaching. We're not about dogma or theology here. We're about what the scripture says and what was meant by the original text. So we're going to go ahead and start in Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 1, y'all. We're finally in Deuteronomy. It only took 14 years, I think. Is this like, I think it's been 4.
Oh my gosh.
Like it anyway.
Wait, so you've been doing this for like 14, where have you been my entire life?
No, I've only been doing this for about a year now, actually. But it took us forever because I would take too much time off. Just too damn much time off. Whenever I need a day off from streaming, I always take non-believers Bible study off. So it puts us behind. Okay. Good morning, Godwin. Welcome up. Kyle, I don't know if you know you're up here, but you are, and you're more than welcome to stay. I just muted you. All right, let's dig in. These are the words that Moses spoke to all Israel beyond the Jordan, in the wilderness, on the plain opposite Suph, between Paran and Tophel, Laban, Hazeroth, and Dizahab. By the way, Mount Seir, it takes 11 days to reach Kadesh Barnea from Horeb. In the In the 40th year, on the first day of the 11th month, Moses spoke to the Israelites just as the Lord had commanded him to speak to them. This was after he had defeated King Sihon of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon, and King Og of Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth and in Edrei, beyond the Jordan in the land of Moab. Moses undertook to expound this law as follows. So, first of all, is there any questions or comments or anything about that first paragraph there?
Mine, because I'm trying to read it. What version are you using?
I use the New Revised Standard Edition.
Oh, okay. I have the Life Application Bible. So, like...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, like, there were words that you said and, like, words that they put in mine that weren't there. And I'm like, wait, hold on.
Let me look at this summary real quick. The passage, Moses addresses all of Israel. They talk about several locations. This is setting the scene for the second law. The name Deuteronomy comes from Greek Deuteronomian or whatever, I don't know, meaning second law. That's what Deuteronomy means, okay? Who is here?
So
Godwin fell down.
Bible, with it being the Life Application Bible, it actually has like a sub paragraph down below, and it says I don't read any of that because it's written by apologists. I do not read anything from the Christian study Bibles. Gotcha.
Okay, so we're reading what the actual text in Hebrew meant. The passages list a bunch of locations that are not easy to identify with certainty. Scholars debate several of them: Seth, Tophel, Laban, Dizahab. Some think the list might function like a coded reference to wilderness stories Israel already knew. Example, certain names could be word plays referring to places where Israel complained in the wilderness. So the opening may subtly remind the audience, remember all those times you messed up in the wilderness? The 11th-day journey line is important. I thought so because it was kind of weird how it's just stuck in there that, about the 11 days. It is 11 days from Horeb to Kadesh Barnea. But Israel took 40 years to make that journey. So it should have taken them 11 days.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, they just kept going around in circles.
The contrast is intentional. The author is highlighting the journey should have been short. The delay happened because of rebellion and disobedience. It's basically a theological jab before the speech, okay? So the defeat of Sihon and Og anchors the timeline. The reference to Sihon, king of Amorites, and Og, king of Bashan, points back to events recorded in the book of Numbers 21. These victories happened just before Israel enters Canaan. Established that Israel already conquered land east of the Jordan. So the speech is positioned right before the final stage of the conquest story. Explain the law signals what the book is. Okay, and then from a critical scholarship perspective, many scholars think the book of Deuteronomy was written much later than Moses. Common academic view, the core text written during Josiah's religious reforms, which was the 7th century BCE.
Equivalent, a kid holding their breath in defiance.
Yes. Structural function. Deuteronomy 1 through 5 acts as a title page and stage setting. So let's go on and read. And the Lord our God spoke to us at Horeb, saying, "You have stayed long enough at this mountain. Resume your journey and go into the hill country of the Amorites, as well as into the neighboring regions, the Arabah, the hill country, the Shephelah, the Negeb, and the seacoast, the land of the Canaanites, and the Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. See, I have set the land before you. Go in and take possession of the land. And I swore to your ancestors, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give to them and to their descendants after them. I do want to highlight that. Where is the 11th day verse? Oh, there it is. It takes 11 days. Okay, I want to make sure I highlight that because I don't want to forget that. All right. What about
So I do have a question about this.
Okay.
So basically, God is commanding them to go and invade this land, right? And say, oh, you know what? I told your ancestors that they could have this land. Go invade.
Yes, that is what I'm getting. The mount. First, it's telling him you've stayed long enough, and it is retelling the story really briefly. Then it's talking about the geographic expansion, and it is huge. The promised territory stretches from the Mediterranean coast through the Canaanite lands all the way to the Euphrates River.
All right, so we're non-believers here, right?
Yeah, we're all non-believers here.
Correct.
All right, so this is why I feel like, and I'm so sorry, I am a white person speaking here, but I feel like this is kind of proof of, oh, we were supposed to come in and claim this land, even though it's not ours. Like, it's wrong. Like, even though God claimed it, oh, hey, we're going to take this land. No, it didn't belong to you. This land already belonged to somebody else. I don't care what claim you have on it. It belonged to somebody else.
That's true. That is true.
Not only
And
that,
that is why
not only that, but the God doing it had snapped his fingers to have the world flooded and did all these amazing miracles that completely wiped people out, plagues, and let's not forget the angel of death. He could have just sent the angel of death to all these towns. So it's pretty obvious that this is just so that governments wouldn't have trouble sending soldiers out to do their dirty work.
Right. Yeah. Like, have other people.
we have it today. We still have this today where they invoke
absolutely.
the name of God for reasons of war. So here they are invoking God to say, we are supposed to go out and conquer all of this in the name of God. And that is what Pete, what's his fuck is saying to our troops right now, that they are in a holy war and that they are doing this.
Thank you for not
God.
saying his name. It's like
sorry,
Voldemort.
I said it. I shouldn't have said it. Smeg Smith.
It's okay. I don't. If I cared about his name, I would have said it. I don't give a
Did
fuck.
he really
about
say
it.
that, Crystal?
Yeah.
Has he been saying
Yes.
that? Oh,
Yes.
I gotta get
this
these
is a
quotes.
holy war. You can go look. He keeps.
Yeah,
there are
that's-
troops that are complaining.
No, he actually tried to say that.
Good.
Like, he legitimately said.
No, he
that
didn't
this
try.
Is,
He did say it.
Well, he
He
tried
said it.
because he can't speak eloquently. So that's why I say he tried.
No, but he did say it. I don't want people to think that I'm wrong. He said it. He said it, and troops
Yeah.
have been complaining.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on because we got 3 chapters to get to, and then I have a Auntie sermon for you guys. Okay, at that time I said to you, I am unable by myself to bear you. The Lord your God has multiplied you, so that today you are as numerous as the stars of heaven. May the Lord, the God of your ancestors, increase you 1,000 times more and bless you as he has promised you. But how can I bear the heavy burden of your disputes all by myself? Choose for each of your tribes individuals who are wise, discerning, and reputable to be your leaders. You answered me, the plan you have proposed is a good one. So I took the leaders of your tribes, wise and reputable individuals, and installed them as leaders over you, commanders of thousands, commanders of hundreds, commanders of 50s, commanders of 10s, and officials throughout your tribes. I charged your judges at the time, Give the members of your community a fair hearing and judge rightly between one person and another, whether citizen or resident alien. You must not be partial in judging. Hear out the small and the great alike. You shall not be intimidated by anyone, for the judgment is God's. Any case that is too hard for you, bring to me and I will hear it. So I charge you at that time with all the things that you should do. All right. Now he's like delegating his authority here, huh?
Woof. And this is the scripture that a lot of people use for like how the legislature has been set up. Because so in my version it says appointed them to serve as judges and officials over you. Some are responsible for 1,000 people, some for 100, some for 50, and some for 10. So that kind of delegates down into, all right, presidency, judicial, like then mayor, you know what I mean? Like it kind of goes down. But then like it goes into, here are the cases of those who are poor as well as those who are rich. Don't be afraid of anyone's anger, for the decision you make is God's decision. I think we've lost that in the United States. Like, honestly. Like, this is why I don't get behind like politics and the Bible, because it is so contradictory. Like, okay, you say one thing in like verse 15 and then you're saying another one in verse 17.
Should I take the leaders of your tribes wise and reputable? I don't understand what you're saying.
Oh, okay. So what I'm saying is basically like the people who are trying to act as judges, right, in our country. And they're, I mean, they were
This is showing a military hierarchy. It was trying to show that that Israel was organized, that the military was organized right down from the thousands to the tens. That's what it was showing. It was not about the judicial system as much as it was the military system. Although he's talking about judges, and we're going to talk about that right now. I'm going to point out.
So what I was trying to say is that a lot of people use this verse to basically make it okay for who they elect. Like I know my dad, for example, used it to be like, oh no, God appoints all those who are supposed to be in leadership. And
right
he
here,
actually used
it's not
this
God
verse.
appointing them. This isn't God appointing right here. This is the people. Moses is telling the people to go pick leaders and bring them to him so that he doesn't have to do everything anymore. That he can delegate his authority.
Oh, I am so on point with you, but what I'm saying is other people take this verse and twist it.
Oh, okay. So I do want to point out a contradiction here. So in Exodus, okay, so what we're going to find out is that when you're looking at Deuteronomy 1:9-18, this is where Moses appoints judges, okay? But the earlier version of this story appears in Exodus 18. And in Exodus, the idea comes from Jethro. In the book of Exodus 18, Moses is overwhelmed judging everyone's disputes. His father-in-law, Jethro, and we talked about this because we've been through Exodus now, watches him and basically says, what you are doing is not good. You will wear yourself out. Jethro then tells Moses to appoint leaders of thousands, hundreds, fifties, tens. So in this version, the idea comes from a foreign priest. That's kind of fascinating because Jethro is a Midianite. not an Israelite, not part of the covenant community, yet he provides the wisdom that fixes Israel's leadership problem. But in Deuteronomy, Jethro disappears from this story. Now we're going to look at the book of Deuteronomy 1, 9 through 18. The exact same leadership structure appears, but something changes. Jethro is gone. Instead, Moses says, I say to you, choose wise and understanding men. Now it sounds like Moses himself is proposing the system. So if you want a contradiction, there's another contradiction for you to highlight. It is
like where
Exodus
did Moses
and-
come in and get like the balls to say, "Oh, I'm the one who gets to say"? Like,
Yeah, because God appointed him and said anything that Moses says, we will listen to for an eternity. Let's move on to verse 19. Hey, Robin, good to see you. Are you coming up? All right. Israel's refusal to enter the land. Then just as the Lord our God had ordered us, we set out from Horeb and went through all that great and terrible wilderness that you saw on the way to the hill country of the Amorites until we reached Kadesh Barnea. I said to you, you have reached the hill country of the Amorites, which the Lord our God is giving us. See, the Lord your God has given the land to you. Go up, take possession, as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has promised you. Do not fear or be dismayed. That is 19 through 21, right? Let me get us a little synopsis of that. Hey, Robin, how are you today?
Hi, Crystal and panel. I'm doing well. I'm just breaking my fast, and probably between me muting up, I'm going to be shoveling my face with salad.
Okay. Okay, and now we can talk about food all we want today because Robin has broke fast. So we can actually talk about all we want. Okay, Kadesh Barnea is the turning point. The location, Kadesh Barnea, and I do not know if I pronounced that right. I pronounce every Hebrew word wrong. That's why I'm learning Hebrew. And if you want to join me, class is tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific time on my Discord, and it's absolutely free, and it's taught by Rabbi Bert and Chet, and they are both amazing Hebrew scholars. So come learn with us. Kadesh Barnea is extremely important. This is where Israel is right at the edge of the promised land. The spies are sent in the next section. The generation refuses to enter. So this moment is basically the doorstep of Canaan. Great and terrible wilderness. That phrase describing the wilderness highlights the danger of the journey, okay? The land is already given. The land the Lord is giving you. The conquest is framed as something already granted by God, even though Israel still has to go fight for it. This tension runs throughout the conquest narratives. The land is both a gift and something that has to be taken. So that's kind of, a weird literary tension there.
To me, this still just seems like the Spaniards trying to conquest the U.S., right? Like, what is now the U.S.? To me, it seems like, oh, okay, hey, we landed here. This land is now our land. Fuck whatever you have to say.
Well, that's where they got the idea from, is right here. That's where their colonizing came from, is from these promises in this book.
So that's kind of why I'm not okay with it. Like, yeah, and everybody is behind this. Like, oh, okay, because God said so. Now it's all right. No bullshit. Sorry.
Well, this was no, you're good. Really possible. This is on my mind. This is actually part of the reason I wanted to come up. Was I heard you talking about how Moses's, I forget the name, father-in-law was the person who implemented this idea. Jethro, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one who suggested, hey, don't stretch yourself out too thin. You might want to divide up some of these responsibilities. To me, I feel like that doublespeak may have been a fallback in case people were like, well, if this works, we'll say Moses did it. And if it doesn't work, we'll say he said that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, basically a scapegoat.
Yeah. Yeah, Deborah says he couldn't have made a new island in the Mediterranean and part of this. Yeah, right? What?
Oh my God, yes.
All right. Deuteronomy is setting up the failure. The speech is building toward the famous rebellion story recorded earlier in Book of Numbers 13 and 14. The pattern is this. God says, go into the land. The land is ready. Do not fear. The next verses show Israel becomes afraid. They refuse to enter. So Moses is setting up the contrast between command and disobedience. All right. All of you came to me, and said, we're in verse 22, and said, let us send men ahead of us to explore the land for us and bring back a report to us regarding the route by which we should go up and the cities we will come to. The plan seemed good to me, and I selected 12 of you, one from each tribe. They set out and went up into the hill country, and when they reached the valley of Eshcol, they spied it out and gathered some of the land's produce, which they brought down to us. They brought back a report to us and said, it is good land that the Lord our God is giving us. But you were unwilling to go up. You rebelled against the command of the Lord your God. You grumbled in your tents and said, it is because the Lord hates us that he has brought us out of the land of Egypt to hand us over to the Amorites to destroy us. Where are we headed? Our kindred have made our hearts melt by reporting. Can you guys mute when I'm reading? Because the background noise is distracting. The people are stronger and taller than we. The cities are large and fortified up to heaven. We actually saw there the offspring of the Anakim. I said to you, have no dread or fear of them. The Lord your God who goes before you is the one who will fight for you, just as he did for you in Egypt before your very eyes and in the wilderness where you saw how the Lord your God... I'm sorry, I'm still getting background noise. Might be you. I'm going to mute you. Sorry, Ed. I can't mute you for some reason. The Lord your God who goes before you is the one who will fight for you, just as he did for you in Egypt before your very eyes. And in the wilderness where you saw how the Lord your God carried you, just as one carries a child, all the way that you traveled until you reached this place. But in spite of this, you have no trust in the Lord your God, who goes before you on the way to seek out a place for you to camp in fire by night and in the cloud of day to show you the route you should take. Okay, first of all, I want to say, I really hate how much guilt tripping God does about the whole, I saved you out of the land of Egypt. First, you put me in there.
Yes,
you fucking
thank
put
you.
me in there first. And
Like,
then I
stop
really
guilt
hate
tripping.
this. Hey, don't interrupt, okay? I also hate
Sorry.
when he says, that he carries you like a child. What are you fucking talking about? You fucking got mad at us because we got hungry. You got mad at us because we got thirsty. Are you kidding me? You didn't take care of us. You didn't treat us like that. That is fucking horrible. Okay, we want 22.
I'm sorry. Like, I had to immediately, like, say, hell yeah. Because, no, like, the amount of guilt tripping that God does in the Bible is insane. Like, oh, you're my child, but...
Thank you, Deborah.
Crystal, little fun fact on the column of fire and column of smoke from a science nerd.
Yes.
When there's a whirlwind, and this used to, summon the stories of genies and things like that called dust devils. And it's when the wind swirls, and you can create one with like a campfire. You can actually put fans at an angle in a circle around the fire and create a column of fire. So this probably happened to them a long time ago when they had a campfire in the desert. And in the same thing with smoke during the day or dust during the day. So, I mean, this is probably where the myth came from. Just goes to show these things are just kind of like myths tacked onto myths, you know? Thank God they're not real. Oh, wait, did I say?
I know, right? Thank God. Karhu, my my Discord link is in my bio and it's free to join. Also, if you ever want to support the show, all those links are in my bio as well. So check out my bio when you get a chance. I have a beautiful link tree. It is the prettiest link tree that ever existed. Do not listen to Joel Reed's Bible when he tries to tell you that he has a prettier link tree than me. It's a lie. My link tree is the best link tree, okay? Okay, who asked for the spies? This is one of the biggest differences between the accounts, okay? In the book of Deuteronomy 122, the people come to Moses and ask to send spies. But in the book of Numbers 13, 1 and 2, God commands Moses to send spies. So the same event is framed differently. So we have another contradiction in this story. I gotta write down this other story here before I forget. So we want to look at Exodus. Oh wait, not Exodus. We want to look at Numbers 13 to compare stories. Numbers 13 for contradictions.
I just wanted to say really fast.
This is why I want to look at my pastor and be like, all right, why do you want me to believe in the Bible? Because there's so many fucking contradictions.
Robin, did you say something?
Yeah, Godwin was talking about fire, and I thought that was a really cool thing that was said earlier. But speaking of fire, an analogy that I heard just this morning that I think is just awesome is you wouldn't thank an arsonist for putting out the fire that they started, and that's exactly what this God did, putting the Israelites in bondage in Egypt. He put them in that situation and then saved them from that. But he was the reason why that began in the first place. So likewise, you wouldn't thank an arsonist for putting out the same fire that they started. So they really shouldn't be thanking this God for taking them out of bondage when he put them in it in the first place.
You know, and I hear Joel and Mezzo do, they do this analogy with their guests about, you know, I'm going to shoot a bullet, then I'm going to run and jump in front of that bullet for you, and then I'm going to see how I sacrifice my life for you, right? And the same kind of thing. But you bring up such a good point, Robin, because I live in Southern California, and we have fires that are devastating every year, okay? We literally have a season that is fire season for us, where we have to watch for fires. We all worry about any amount of smoke that we see anywhere. We do not use our fireplaces, our little backyard fire pits. We are very, very careful. No fireworks, because we know how fast the fires can spread. But we also have what are called, I forget what they call them exactly, but they are firemen who start fires so they can put out the fires so that they will look like heroes. Those are real things. Those people really exist. And that's what this God is. He's just a fireman who joined the fire department so he could start fires, so he could put them out and look like a hero. Okay, so we want to make sure we mark down Numbers 13 and 14 as the contradicting book, story here. It's the same story, but it's totally different. Yeah, go ahead, Vox.
About what you just said.
Yeah.
So God putting out fires that he created. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I have never heard it put that way in my entire life, but that is so fucking accurate. And that's kind of what pisses me off, right? Like, oh, we're supposed to worship this God that makes himself seem, all powerful and mighty. No, you caused the problems. Like, yeah. You did it, and now you're wanting us to be thankful because you put out the fire that you created. Like, I've never heard it put that way, but that is so fucking accurate. It's insane. Like, so thank you for...
No problem. But, I mean, Robin brought it up. I just pointed out that there's people who literally exist to do that. Now, I do want to say something. So, at the end, you know, Moses is telling them, like, look, you guys just don't even trust in God yet. Would you trust in this God after it took you 40 years to take a trip that should have taken 11 days, and he starved you and he caused many of you to die? Many of you never are going to make it in the promised land. He swallowed you up whole. He fucking made you like die from eating something that I forget, like it's the quail or some shit that he made them eat. I don't remember. He kept doing horrendous things to you for 40 years after he's the reason why you were a slave in Egypt. Okay. Why the fuck would these people trust this God? What the fuck? Now, also just remember, before all of this, they were doing just fine worshiping the Queen of Heaven. We know that because of Jeremiah 44. But we're going to go on from here. The penalty for Israel's rebellion. When the Lord heard your words, he was wrathful and swore. He was sore. I mean, he swore. Not one of these evil generations shall see the good land, and I swore to give to your ancestors, except Caleb, son of Jephunneh. I don't know how to say that guy's name. He shall see it, and to him and to his descendants I will give the land on which he set foot, because of his complete fidelity to the Lord. Even with me, the Lord was angry on your account, saying, you also shall not enter there. Joshua, son of Nun, your assistant, shall enter there and encourage him, for he is the one who will secure Israel's possession of it. And as for your little ones who you thought would become booty, your children who today do not yet know right from wrong, they shall enter there. To them I will give it, and they shall take possession of it. But as for you, journey back into the wilderness in the direction of the Red Sea. Okay, so can somebody correct me if I'm wrong? Like, isn't this another broken promise?
Absolutely. Yeah. Nope. Absolutely. It is
because didn't he
another broken
promise for all of them
by
to be able to
God.
see the?
So he promised to give them to the promised land, and now he's like, oh no, sorry, you're not following me, but okay, bye, and told them to go back towards the Red Sea. Like, no, fuck you.
If I was doing apologetics for this, like let's say I was a Christian again, I might say that the God changed his mind, but then you would have to contend with the God isn't truly omniscient if he can change his mind. Oh, Crystal, you're muted. Oh, okay. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day.
Sometimes I mute so I can dictate. I don't want to
okay.
type. I'm too fucking lazy to type. Okay. So yes, at first the promise sounds. Excuse the apologetics, okay, here, but at first it is to them. For example, in the book of Exodus 3:8, God says he is bringing the people out of Egypt to bring them into the land. That clearly sounds like the Exodus generation themselves. So he does promise it to them, but then he changes his mind because they rebel. And so he goes, you don't get to go now. I'm sorry, but you're just full of shit. I think that you can't fucking come through with your promises, so you pretend you change your mind later. You know what I mean? Like, I think that it's like pastors who are like, okay, wait, is anybody following the whole Breezy situation with Mezzo? Anybody know what I'm talking about?
No.
Please put a 1 in chat if you know the Breezy and Mezzo situation.
No,
okay, there's this guy Breezy. Okay, so Mezzo a long time ago wrote a word, okay, that he has told nobody, not even his wife, okay? He wrote it on a little sticky note and he put it in his Bible. And all these Christians who come up and say that they have the Holy Spirit or blah, 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 da, 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 he says, okay, then can you pray and ask God what the word is? Because if you get it right, I swear I will fucking convert, like right now, because I don't think anybody could get
Right
this
meow.
right, okay? And so, so even atheists have gone up to guess. Jared, I haven't fucking made a claim yet. I'm talking about Mezzo and Breezy. Are you okay, Pumpkin? Are you all right? Okay. Anyway, so this guy Breezy says, I'm gonna go fast and pray about this, and then I'm gonna come back, and this is like a week or so ago. He's like, I'm gonna come back on, this day, and the Lord is gonna tell me, what it said. Now, to be fair to Breezy, the first time he couldn't come back, I'm sorry, you're interrupting me. Can you mute when I'm talking? Because it's very hard for me. I'm neurodivergent.
Sorry, I was
it distracts
yelling
me.
at my dog. My bad.
Okay, just mute up when I'm talking. Okay. So he tells him, like, I'm gonna come back on this night, but then when he's supposed to come back, something happened to his aunt or something. Anyway, Mezzo gave him a pass. Then the next time, I can't make it tonight. And then the next time, and then finally last night, Breezy says, well, I talked to God and he told me that, I spoke out of turn, but he is going to tell me, he is going to reveal it to me. And there's going to be a revival right here on TikTok. It's going to be so big. It's going to be so amazing, this revival. And so I think he's supposed to come back by Friday but what has pissed all of us off, all of us who are watching along, is that Mezzo was going to finally tell us the word if Breezy got it wrong. And he was going to fucking finally tell us the word. And we keep getting put off on learning what the word is because of this fucking Breezy guy. And it's pissing us all off because we want to know what the fucking word is. We've all been guessing. And we want to fucking know what the word is. But yeah, Breezy acts just like his God, making one excuse after another. I promised you the promised land. I was just kidding. I promised you I'd come and guess that word. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. So.
Or just so everybody can hear me right now, my guess, the Holy Spirit has come on to me. It's cantaloupe.
Okay. Cantaloupe. I don't think anybody's guessed that yet, Robin, so it might be it. Oh my God. You're waiting to guess too? Okay. See, there's a lot of people vested in this.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear what the actual word is.
Jared, I know, I'm really excited. Have you guys heard me preaching this morning, or have I been reading the Bible?
Honestly, mine would be pineapple.
Okay, pineapple. All right. We've got some good guesses here, and I will clip this. If any of you guys get it right, I will clip it. I'm sorry, you guys. Jared is saying that I was preaching. Have I been preaching this morning or reading the actual Bible?
Just reading.
Just reading.
Kind of weird.
Reading, and reading is
weird.
fundamental.
That people don't know what the Bible says.
Where is somebody saying that you're preaching? You're not preaching. You literally
in the
read...
chat. Yes, Mezzo has told us the word is related to his deconstruction, but he hasn't said how it's related. It could have been that he ate a pineapple on the day he deconstructed. He's not said how it's related. All right.
I took two guesses already.
So I would
don't
like
think I'm
to
allowed
say,
more than two.
Kayla D said, it's all love. I would love to share. Yes, it is all love here. Like, we're not trying to preach. We're not trying to do any kind of...
Oh, no. That's not what Kayla D is saying, Vox. Kayla D is trying to say the Bible is all love and wants to come up and preach to us. No. Okay, let's move on.
Well,
Verse 41. Verse 41. You answered me. We have sinned against the Lord. We are ready to go up and fight, just as the Lord our God commanded us. So all of you strapped on your battle gear and thought it easy to go up into the hill country. The Lord said to me, say to them, do not go up and do not fight, for I am not in the midst of you. Otherwise, you will be defeated by your enemies. Although I told you, you would not listen. You rebelled against the command of the Lord and presumptuously went up into the hill country. The Amorites who lived in the hill country then came out against you and chased you as bees do. They beat you down in Seir as far as Hormah. When you returned and wept before the Lord would neither heed your voice nor pay you any attention. Yeah, because he's an asshole. Like, what the fuck? Like, this God is such an ass. Like, of course not. I want you to picture every time that this is a child coming to their father, because that is what we're led to believe throughout this book, that that's who this is, right? Can you imagine if your kid got in a fight with another kid and then he came home crying to you and you were like, no, fuck you.
I mean, that's what I deal with on a daily basis with my dad. So yeah, honestly, like, and he is conservative Christian. So, I mean, I kind of understand, like, yeah, okay, you got your idealistics from the God that you worship. Now I kind of understand.
Hey, Tommy J, I don't know if you can see this, but I have to tell you the funniest thing I saw on TikTok. You guys, Tommy J is my twin. I don't know if you know Tommy J, but you should be following him. That's my twin. Anyway, twin, I gotta tell you the funniest thing that made me think of you. This guy said, we really are out here just calling each people mattress sizes. Hey, twin. Hi, king. Hi, queen.
Oh my God! Now I can't unsee it.
I'll take mattress size any day.
God, now I can't unsee it. Like,
what'd you say, Tommy?
Have you been? Or like, hey, twin? Yeah. Oh my God.
I'll take twin
That's
size.
my futon right there.
Like, hey, king.
My futon is crazy. That's like a ride or die.
Like, God damn it, now I can't
your flaky friends.
She wrote it on. Like,
Your flaky friends, you call them your air mattress. Because they run out of...
Yes.
Yeah, you might call your loose friends that too. You'd be like, yeah, your holes are blown out. You're an air mattress.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, I love you all so much.
I just had to bring you up for that. You can hang out, but that was all I wanted to tell you, because ever since I saw it, I thought of you. I was like, I've got to tell Tommy this. This is hilarious.
Now I can't unsee it or unhear it. So thank you so fucking much for that.
If anybody ever wonders why we feel so kindred, because we have different backgrounds. But one thing that I know for fucking sure is Crystal gonna get up in your ass just like a cancer always will. We are so kind and we're so compassionate and we have so much empathy that when you push us to the point that we no longer have empathy for you, you have crossed a fucking line.
Yes, you have. And it takes a lot to push that line. But
well, honestly, that's one of the reasons that I joined the live is because you have so much love for everybody. And like, honestly, that made me love you even more. Like, I've watched you for a while, but I've never come up live with you. And now that I've come up live with you, like, it makes me love you even more because you have so much care and compassion for the people that, you know, are here.
I do love this community. This community has changed my life, and I do love them. And Jared, if you think that reading the Bible is revision, you need to get a dictionary, pumpkin, because you need to learn what words mean, okay? Reading is not revision, okay? But that's okay. I know that a lot of times people who were homeschooled don't have reading comprehension skills. So Ask your mom why she never gave you a dictionary, and then go buy yourself one, okay? You guys, I'm going to stop here for the Bible study today because I don't know how long my leg is going to let me sit here. And I do have an Auntie sermon for y'all this morning. You can stay up here if you want. You could drop down. I don't mind, but I am going to ask you all to mute up while I read the sermon this morning. Let me find today's sermon. We are going back into Genesis because I forgot some people in Genesis just when I was doing my sermons, and I need to get them caught up for the podcast. And I am working right now on something so fun and so amazing. And I'm not sure, like, I want to offer it for free to people who already support the show, and then I'll find out a way for other people to, purchase it for. I'm not going to make it expensive or anything, but it is a companion to my podcast, and it is a decentering and a deconstructing workbook that goes with my podcast, okay? And it's a color workbook, so you get to color while you're listening to the podcast, and then answer questions to help you decenter men and start deconstructing some of your misogynistic beliefs. So we're going to go into our sermon today is called The Trauma of Lot's Daughters. The first time we meet them, Genesis 19:8. See now? Vox, thanks for being here. I appreciate you. Guys, make sure you follow Vox. See now, I have 2 daughters who have not known a man. Please let me bring them out to you, and do to them as is good in your eyes. Only don't do anything to these men, because they have come under the shadow of my roof. This is the first moment the daughters enter the story, and they enter it through trauma. The first thing we learn about them is that their own father is willing to hand them over to a mob, not strangers, not enemies, their father, the man responsible for their safety, stands at the doorway and offers them to a crowd outside. Do to them as is good in your eyes. Sit with that sentence for a moment. These are his daughters. These are children who grew up in his house, and when violence arrives at the door, he decides they are the acceptable sacrifice. 2 girls offered to a mob so that male guests can remain protected. In that moment, they witness their father decide that their bodies are negotiable. And what is equally disturbing is that story does not pause here. No angels rebuke him. No voice from heaven interrupts the scene. The narrative simply moves forward as if this moment is just another detail in the unfolding story. But for these girls, this moment is the beginning of everything that follows. And it is one of the most disturbing entrances for any characters in the entire book of Genesis. Every verse where Lot's daughters appear. Before we interpret their story, it helps to see every place the text actually mentions them. When we lay the verses out together, we can watch the narrative unfold step by step. Genesis 19:8. Lot offers his daughters to the mob outside his door. Genesis 19:12. The angels ask Lot if he has anyone else in the city to gather, including sons-in-laws and daughters. Genesis 19:14. Lot goes out to speak to the men connected to his daughters and warns them that the city will be destroyed. Genesis 19:15. The angels tell Lot to take his wife and your 2 daughters who are here and flee the city. Genesis 19:16. Lot lingers and the angels take hold of his hand, the hand of his wife and the hand of his 2 daughters, and lead them out of the city. Genesis 19:30. After escaping to Zoar, Lot leaves the town and goes to live in the hills with his 2 daughters, and they dwell in a cave. Genesis 19:31 through 32. The firstborn daughter speaks to the younger and proposes a plan to preserve the family line. Genesis 19:33. The first night they give their father wine, and the firstborn lies with him. Genesis 19:34. The next day, the firstborn instructs the younger to repeat the plan. Genesis 19:35. The second night, they again give Lot brought wine, and the younger lies with him. Genesis 19:36. Both daughters become pregnant by their father. Genesis 19:37. The firstborn daughter gives birth to a son and names him Moab, the ancestor of the Moabites. Genesis 19:38. The younger daughter gives birth to a son and names him Ben-Ami, the ancestor of the Ammonites. When we place the verses together like this, we can see the entire arc of the daughter's story from the moment they are first mentioned in the doorway of Lot's house through the destruction of their city to the strange and controversial ending that leads to the birth of two nations. The story we are told. The story of Lot's daughters unfolds in the shadow of catastrophe. They are living in Sodom when the city suddenly becomes the center of a terrifying moment. A mob gathers outside their home. Violence presses against the door. And in the middle of that chaos, their father does the unthinkable. He offers them to the crowd. The night does not end there. Two messengers pull Lot back inside the house and warn him that the city is about to be destroyed. Fire and judgment are coming. The family must flee. Lot runs out to warn the men connected to his daughters, but the warning is dismissed as a joke. No one believes destruction is actually coming. Morning arrives and the messengers urge the family to leave immediately. Lot hesitates and the messengers physically grab him, his wife, and his daughters and drag them out of the city. Behind them, the destruction begins. The sky rains fire and sulfur. Cities collapse. Everything they knew, homes, neighbors, streets, the entire life they had lived vanishes in a moment of divine judgment. During the escape, their mother turns back and becomes a pillar of salt. The daughters keep running. At first, the family takes refuge in a small town called Zor. But even there, their father becomes afraid. He leaves the town and takes the girls up into the hill, where the three of them end up living alone in a cave. And there, in that cave, the story takes a turn that has haunted readers for centuries. The older daughter looks at the younger and says that there is no man left on earth to come to them in the usual way. If their family line is going to continue, they believe it will have to happen through their father. So they devise a plan. On two successive nights, they get Lot wine until he becomes drunk. On the first night, the older daughter lies with him. On the second night, the younger daughter does the same. Both daughters become pregnant. The firstborn gives birth to a son named Moab. The text tells us he becomes the ancestor of the Moabites. The younger gives birth to Ben-Ami, ancestor of the Ammonites. And with that, the story closes. Two daughters, two sons, and the birth of two nations. Rabbinical wrestling. When Jewish rabbis sat down with this story, they did not treat it like a simple moral lesson. They wrestled with it. And one of the first things that caught their attention was a strange little phrase buried in the text. Genesis 19:14 tells us that Lot goes out to warn his sons-in-law. But just a few verses earlier, when the angels finally dragged the family out of Sodom, the text says, 19:15, verses later, not earlier. Arise, take your wife and your two daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in the iniquity of the city. Now, the rabbis noticed something. The verse doesn't simply say your daughters. It says your two daughters who are here. And the rabbis asked the obvious question. Why say the daughters who are here unless there were daughters who were not here? And in the ancient rabbinic commentary, Genesis Rabbah 59, some rabbis conclude that Lot may actually have had 4 daughters. 2 daughters were still living in the house, the ones who escaped the city with him, but 2 other daughters may already have been married and living elsewhere in Sodom. And if that is the case, then something heartbreaking may be hiding inside the story. It may mean the daughters who fled the burning city had already lost sisters in the destruction. But the rabbis didn't stop there. They also wrestled with the moment in the cave, the moment that has made readers uncomfortable for thousands of years. Some rabbis read the story as a warning. They emphasize the shame connected to the nations that came from this event. In Leviticus, Rabbah 23:9, the beginnings of Moab and Ammon are treated as morally troubling origins. But other rabbis looked at that story and asked a completely different question. They asked, why did those girls, I'm sorry, I don't know why I can't read right now. What did those girls think had just happened to the world? In Genesis, Rabbah 51:8, some rabbis suggest that the daughters may have believed the entire human world had been destroyed. Bye, Tommy. Love you. Think about what they had just witnessed. Fire falling from the sky, cities collapsing, their community gone, their mother gone. From their perspective, humanity itself may have been wiped out. And if that is what they believed, then the story begins to look very different. Because in that reading, the daughters are not acting out of lust. They are acting out of desperation. Some rabbis suggest they believe the human family had to continue somehow and that they were the only ones left to do it. Which means even inside the Jewish tradition, this story has never been simple. Some rabbis saw shame, others saw survival, but all of them recognize the same thing. This story is disturbing, and people have been struggling to understand it for centuries. How the Christian church read this story. When the Christian church began preaching this story, something interesting happened. Most sermons did not begin with the terror those girls experienced. They began with judgment. For centuries, Christian preaching often treated this story as a warning about sexual sin, drunkenness, and moral collapse. And in many of these sermons, the daughters became the villains. They were described as cunning, manipulative, sexually immoral women who deliberately seduced their father. For example, the 4th century preacher John Chrysostom, preaching through Genesis in his homilies on Genesis, used the story to warn his congregation about drunkenness and uncontrolled desire. Chrysostom argued that Lot's wine clouded his judgment and that the daughters took advantage of his intoxication, turning the moment into a lesson about the dangers of moral weakness. Around the same time, Jerome, the great translator of the Latin Bible, made an observation in his work, Hebrew Questions on Genesis. Jerome pointed out that the name Moab can be understood in Hebrew as meaning from father. For Jerome, that name preserved the scandal of the story itself, a permanent reminder of what he believed to be a disgraceful beginning. Another towering voice in early Christianity, Augustine of Hippo, addressed the passage in the city of God. Augustine acknowledged that Lot had been overcome with wine, but he still used the story to talk about human moral collapse. How even someone who escaped the destruction of Sodom could fall into the shame through weakness and lack of self-control. And as Christian preaching continued through the centuries, the tone often became even harsher. In medieval sermons and later moral teaching, the daughters were frequently portrayed as seductive schemers, women who used sexuality to manipulate their father. The story became a cautionary tale about lust, temptation, and what preachers sometimes described as the dangerous power of female sexuality. In that tradition, the birth of Moab and Ben-Ami was remembered primarily as scandal. Two nations born from disgrace, two peoples whose beginnings were meant to carry the stain of this moment. But in more recent years, some Christian scholars have begun asking a different question. Instead of beginning with condemnation, they begin with catastrophe. Old Testament scholar Gordon Wenham, writing in the World's Biblical Commentary on Genesis, reminds readers that the daughters had just watched the entire society collapse. Their cities burned, their communities vanished. Their mother died during the escape. So when the older daughter says, "There is no man on earth," Wenham suggests she may genuinely believe the human world has been wiped out. Another scholar, Victor Hamilton, writing in the New International Commentary on the Old Testament, makes a similar observation. Hamilton argues that from the daughter's perspective, the normal Oh, I froze for a minute. The normal structures of society may have completely disappeared. If the world they knew was gone, then the future of their family may have seemed to depend on them alone. Which means Christian interpretation has not always told just one story about these girls. One tradition remembered them as immoral seductresses. Another has begun asking what it means to survive the end of the world that you knew. And yet there is one detail about these girls that almost no Christian sermon ever mentions. Now here is something that, I'm sorry. And yet there is one detail about these girls that almost no Christian sermon ever mentions. When I was taught this story as a Christian, these daughters were never described as girls. They were described as women. Promiscuous women, conniving women, women who didn't trust God enough and decided to do something disgusting and morally corrupt. That is the version of the story many of us were handed. But something was missing from that teaching. These were not grown women. These were girls. Young girls who had just watched their entire world burn. And there is another piece of the story that almost never makes it into Christian sermons. Because if you follow the line of the older daughter, the one who gives birth to Moab, the story eventually leads somewhere very unexpected. Moab becomes the ancestor of the Moabites. The generations later, a Moabite woman named Ruth enters the story. The book of Ruth tells us that Ruth becomes the great-grandmother of King David. And the New Testament tells us that the line of David is the line through which Jesus is born. Which means that the older daughter of Lot, the girl that Christian tradition often portrayed as immoral and disgusting, becomes one of the ancestors in the lineage of Jesus himself. And somehow preachers can't find a way to put that into their Sunday morning sermons. How other traditions told the story. Now, something very interesting happens when we step outside the Bible and look at how other ancient communities told this story, because the moment the story leaves Genesis, it starts to change. Different cultures remembered it differently. Different writers emphasized different things. And sometimes the most disturbing part of the story disappears entirely. Take the first century Jewish historian Flavius Josephus. Writing around the year 90 CE in his History Antiquities of the Jews, book 1, chapter 11, Josephus retells the story of Lot's daughters, but when Josephus tells it, he doesn't linger on the scandal the way later preachers often did. He tells the story almost like a historian explaining where two nations come from. The daughters conceive children, and those children become the ancestors of the Moabites and the Ammonites. For Josephus, the story functions less like a sermon about sin and more like an explanation of history. But another ancient Jewish text tells the story very differently. A work called the Book of Jubilees, written about 2 centuries before the time of Jesus, takes a work called the Book of Jubilees, written about 2 centuries before the time of Jesus, takes a much harsher tone. In Jubilees 16:7 through 9, the origins of Moab and Ammon are described as disgraceful beginnings. In the telling, the story becomes a warning about moral corruption among the surrounding nations. Same story, very different emphasis. But then something even more surprising happens when we move into another religious tradition. The Quran also tells the story of Lot and the destruction of Sodom. Sodom. You can find it in the passages like Surah 11:77 through 83 and Surah 15:61 through 74. The Quran describes the mob surrounding Lot's house. It describes the destruction of the city. It describes Lot and his family escaping the catastrophe. But there is something missing. The cave is gone. The drunkenness is gone. The daughters conceiving children by their father is gone. The entire part of the story simply does not appear in the Quranic telling at all, which means that one of the most disturbing episodes in Genesis disappears completely in another tradition that also reveres Lot as a prophet. And when we look at the wider world of ancient texts, including traditions preserved in communities that use the Ethiopian biblical canon, where books like Jubilees were preserved for centuries, we see the same pattern. The story keeps being told, but it is not always told the same way. Some communities repeat it as an explanation for the origins of neighboring nations. Some tell it as a moral warning, and some traditions quietly leave the most troubling part of the story out altogether, which tells us something important. People have been struggling with this story for a very long time. The tragedy of Lot's daughters. The tragedy of Lot's daughters begins long before the moment that will later define them. First, we have to talk about their likely age. Genesis 19:8 tells us that Lot described them as daughters who have not known a man. In the ancient Near Eastern world, girls were typically promised in marriage very young. Historians of ancient Israelite culture, including Carol Myers, whose work examines family life in ancient Israel, point out that the girls were commonly betrothed soon after puberty. By the early teens, many were already preparing for marriage, which means these daughters were almost certainly very young, young enough to still be living in their father's household, young enough that their safety depended entirely on his protection. And that makes the next moment in the story even harder to understand. When violence arrives at the door, Lot does something that has troubled readers for centuries. He offers his daughters to the mob. And the moment we say that aloud, the questions start coming. Why the daughters? Why are they an acceptable sacrifice? Why does Lot not offer himself? If someone must go outside that door, why does the father not step outside first? And there is another question that often goes unasked. Genesis 19:14 tells us that Lot has sons-in-law connected to these daughters. So if they are grown men connected to this family, why are those men not offered instead? Why are the girls the ones placed in danger? Some scholars point out that Lot's decision reflects the harsh expectations of ancient hospitality customs. Protecting guests under one's roof was considered a sacred duty in the ancient Near East. Scholars such as Victor Hamilton, writing in the New International Commentary on the Old Testament, explain that hosts in the culture were expected to protect their guests at almost any cost. But even if hospitality was sacred, that explanation still leaves us with a deeply uncomfortable truth. The daughters were the expendable ones. Their bodies became bargaining chips in a negotiation between men. And the text never pauses to justify it. The story simply moves forward. But the tragedy does not stop there. Genesis 19:14 tells us that Lot goes out to warn his sons-in-law about the coming destruction. Yet when the angels finally drag the family out of the city, Genesis 19:15 says, "Take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here." And that phrase raises another question. Why say the daughters who are here unless there were daughters who were not there? Some interpreters believe the men in the verse 14 were simply betrothed to the same 2 daughters who later escaped with Lot. In the ancient world, a betrothal was already considered a binding relationship, even if the marriage had not taken place. If that is the case, then Lot warning those men simply means he was trying to gather the entire household before fleeing the city. But there is another possibility. Some rabbis recorded in Genesis Rabbah 59 suggest that Lot may have had additional daughters who were already married and living elsewhere in Sodom. If that interpretation is correct, then the situation becomes even more tragic. Because in that case, Lot goes out to warn the sons-in-law. But the text never mentions those daughters, which leaves us sitting with a painful possibility. 2 young girls running from a burning city, a father who has already shown he is willing to offer them to violence, a family that may already be breaking apart in the middle of catastrophe, and all of that happens before we ever reach the cave. The tragedy of Lot's daughters begins the moment the story introduces them. The destruction they witness. Now stop for a minute. Before we rush into the cave, before we rush to the part of the story that people love to argue about, we have to go back and remember what these girls just lived through. And I want you to picture this clearly, because these are not grown women in this story. These are young girls. Genesis tells us They had not known a man, which in that culture meant that they were unmarried and still living in their father's household. In the ancient world, girls were typically married soon after reaching maturity. But the story also tells us something else. These girls later become pregnant, which means they were old enough to conceive. So we are probably looking at girls in their early teens, 13, 14, maybe 15. Young, very young. So as you hear the rest of this story, I want you to keep that in your mind. Picture them that way, not the way later tradition sometimes paints them, but as young teenage girls standing in the middle of a nightmare, because the world they knew did not simply change, it ended. Imagine the sky itself turning against you. Genesis tells us that the fire and sulfur began falling from heaven. Not a small fire, not a single building burning. Cities, entire cities. The streets where these girls had grown up, the houses they walked past every day, the market stalls, the wells, the doors of neighbors who had known them since childhood, all of it gone up in flames. Children screaming, animals running, people trying to flee, smoke filling the sky. And somewhere in that chaos, these girls are running out of the city, running past buildings collapsing, running while the ground behind them burns. Everything they have ever known is disappearing behind them. Every friend, every familiar street, every neighbor, every piece of the life they had lived. And then in the middle of the escape, something else happened. Their mother stops. Genesis tells us she looks back. And one of the strangest and most haunting images in the entire Bible, she becomes a pillar of salt. Which means these daughters do not just lose their city, they lose their mother while they're still running. One moment she is behind them, the next moment she is gone. The story does not stop for their grief. The story does not pause so they can mourn. They keep running away from the destruction of everything they have ever known until eventually there is nothing left behind them but smoke and ash. And when they finally stop running, they have nothing. No home, no city, no neighbors, no community, no mother. Just the clothes on their back, their father beside them, and a world that looks like it has ended. Isolation in the hills. After the fire stops falling and the smoke begins to settle, the story tells us that Lot and his daughters do not stay in the ruins of the world they just escaped. At first, Lot takes them to a town called Zoar. That had been the compromise he asked for when he fled the destruction. Instead of running all the way into the mountains, like the angels told him, he begged to stop in a little town. And for a moment, it seems like that is where the story might pause. But it doesn't last. Genesis tells us that Lot becomes afraid to stay there, afraid even in Zoar. So once again, he leaves. And this time, he does exactly what he had been told to do in the first place. He goes up into the hills. But he does not go with a household. He does not go with a community. He does not go with neighbors, servants, relatives, and friends. He goes with 2 daughters. That is all that remains of his family. Genesis 19:30 tells us that Lot and his daughters end up living in a cave in the mountains. A cave. Not a city, not village, not houses, no streets filled with people, just rock and wilderness. And 3 human beings who have just watched their entire world disappear, Lot and his 2 daughters. And this is Auntie Crystal's point of view. Now let me tell you where I land when I sit with this story. I've read the rabbis. I've read the theologians. I've read the scholars. And a few things stand out to me. One argument you often hear is that the daughters believed the whole world had been destroyed. Some interpreters say that when the older daughter says there is not a man on the earth, she thought humanity itself was gone. But I struggle with that explanation because the story tells us that after fleeing the destruction, Lot and his daughters first lived in Zoar. Zoar was still standing. People were there. Civilization still existed. So whatever those girls believed while they were running through fire and smoke, by the time they reached Zoar, they knew the human world had not completely disappeared. Which means something else in this story begins to matter much more to me. Who is telling it? Because the version we have is not the daughter's version. The version we have is a version preserved by male storytellers in a world where women were not treated as full participants in society. In that world, women were property. They sat at the bottom of the social hierarchy. Their voices were rarely recorded, and their experiences were almost never centered. So when I read this story, I notice something. I hear Lot's side of the story, but we never hear theirs. And history has shown us something uncomfortable about stories like that. When powerful men tell the story, women are very often blamed. Again and again. In the real world, we see situations where harm happens to women and girls, and the story that circulates afterward somehow shifts the blame onto them. So when I read Genesis 19, I have to ask a hard question. Is this the daughter's story, or is this Lot's story about the daughters? Because the narrative asks us to believe something very specific. It asks us to believe that two young girls manipulated their father while he was intoxicated, and that he had no awareness of what was happening. And I have to be honest with you, that explanation does not convince me, not for one moment. What convinces me more is how often history shows powerful men rewriting events in ways that protect themselves and shift blame onto women. So when I read this story, I don't see two manipulative seductresses. I see two young girls who had just lost their entire world, their city, their home, their community, their mother, and a father who earlier in the story had already shown he was willing to sacrifice them when danger came to the door. And when the only version of the story we have comes from a world where men controlled the narrative, I think it is worth asking whether the version we inherited is the whole truth, or whether it is a story told by someone trying to protect himself. When the fallacy of Lot's innocence. When I read this story and sit with the debates from rabbis, theologians, and scholars, several things stand out to me. One common argument used to justify the daughter's action is that they believe the entire world had been destroyed. And as I've said, I don't really find that to be accurate because they lived in Zor. But if I've learned anything while writing these sermons, it is this. The most important thing to remember is who is telling this story? And it is told by men, for men. In the biblical narrative, those girls never get to tell their side. At the time, women weren't viewed as human beings. They were property sitting at the very bottom of a rigid hierarchy. Nobody asked those girls what happened. I feel like I'm repeating something here, and that does, I'm sorry, it does fix itself. Sometimes my editing isn't very good. Sorry about that. Broke the fourth wall there for a minute. For any woman who has experienced sexual assault or known someone who has, we know the truth. Men lie to protect their power. They blame women consistently to shift the shame. I don't believe Lot's story for 1 minute. You cannot tell me that two young traumatized girls got their father so drunk that he was unaware of what was happening, yet physically capable of performing for 2 nights in a row. It doesn't work that way. It is far more reasonable to believe that Lot, a man who had already shown his true colors, raped and impregnated his daughters, then concocted a story where they were the aggressors. This isn't just a dark theory, it is a pattern we see repeated throughout history. Maybe you've heard the name Stephen Pladell. Decades ago, he gave up a daughter for adoption. Like so many children searching for their roots, she grew up and went looking for her biological father. She found him, but instead of a protector, she found a predator. Once they were reunited, Pladell began grooming her. He was married at the time, and when his wife finally discovered the truth, he did what many of these men do. He lied. He looked her in the eye and claimed the relationship was consensual. He painted a picture of a mutual choice to hide the reality of his own depravity. His wife divorced him, and he eventually impregnated his daughter, but his daughter realized this wasn't love. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't okay. So she tried to leave. And once Stephen Pladell realized his control was slipping through his fingers, once he realized he could no longer hide behind his web of lies and deceit, he chose the ultimate path of coward. He chose violence. In 2018, he murdered his own daughter, their innocent child, and her adopted father before taking his own life. When I look at Stephen Pladell, I don't see a victim of circumstances. I see a man who manipulated the narrative until the narrative failed him. And when I look at the cave of Lot, I see the same thing, a man using his power to rewrite a crime as a choice. And if you think Stephen Pladell is an isolated case, look at Joseph Fritzl. In 2008, for 24 years, nearly a quarter of a century, this man kept his own daughter, Elizabeth, imprisoned in a soundproof cellar beneath the very floorboards where his wife slept. He raped her thousands of times. He fathered 7 children with her in the dark. But look at what happened when the light finally hit the cellar. Did he bow his head in shame? No. He started telling stories. First, he claimed she had run away years ago to join a religious cult. He blamed her rebellious spirit for her absence. Then, when he was backed into a corner in a courtroom, he tried to tell the world he wasn't a monster. He claimed he was addicted to her. He tried to suggest that he had cared for the family he created in that dungeon, even implying that he was a victim of his own desires. He tried to make the world believe that this wasn't a story of a predator, but a story of a complicated man and a difficult daughter. Sound familiar? It's the oldest trick in the book. The man holds the power, the man commits the crime, and then the man points a finger at the woman and says, "She led me to it." Joseph Fritzl tried to do it in 2008, and I believe Lot did the exact same thing in the cave thousands of years ago. These girls had lost everything: their home, their friends, their mother, and their security. And what had their father shown them? Weakness. Lot was the man who offered his daughters up to a violent mob in Sodom without hesitation. He was the man who lingered so long in a dying city that the angels had to literally drag him out by the hand. He was too weak to go to the hills as commanded, begging instead to go to Zor, only to flee in cowardice again. We are led to believe this weak, backboneless man was a helpless victim of his daughter's schemes. No, I'm not buying it. And neither should you. We have seen for centuries how men twist scripture to maintain superiority and hide their crimes. Lot didn't lose his way in a bottle. He used his power to prey on the only things he had left to own. And now we're going to return to the girls. Now, after all that, the debates, the interpretations, the arguments from rabbis, the theologians, and scholars, I want to return to the girls, because at the center of this entire story are 2 young daughters. 2 girls. And everything that happens from the moment those strangers knock on the door of Lot's house to the moment those girls give birth is soaked in trauma. The night begins with a mob at the door. Their father offers them to that mob. The city burns. They run for their lives while fire falls from the sky. Their mother dies in the middle of their escape. Their home is gone. Their neighbors are gone. Their world is gone. And the story wants us to believe that these girls are the villains. For centuries, that is how this story has been told. Preachers have stood behind pulpits and turned these daughters into cautionary tales. Loose women, promiscuous women, women who could not control their own desires. But that is not the text speaking. That is tradition speaking. That is men telling the story in a way that served their purpose. Because stories like this were also weapons in the ancient world. The Moabites and the Ammonites were enemies of Israel. And one of the ways ancient writers mocked their enemies was telling stories about their origin, stories meant to shame them, stories meant to call them corrupt, stories meant to suggest they came from disgrace. In other words, stories meant to say those people come from something ugly. And later preachers picked up that same story and used it for a different purpose, to warn daughters, to control daughters, to teach young girls that their bodies were dangerous and that they were responsible for the desires of men. But in all those sermons, something was quietly forgotten. The daughters were not women, they were girls. Young girls who had just watched their world burn, girls whose mother was left behind in the field as a pillar of salt, girls whose father had already shown he was willing to sacrifice them when danger came to the door. And there is another detail that somehow gets left out of those sermons. The older daughter, the one whose name the Bible never bothers to record, gives birth to Moab. And from that line, generations later, comes a woman named Ruth. Ruth becomes the great-grandmother of David, and from David comes the royal line of Israel. And the New Testament tells us that from that line comes Jesus Christ, the Messiah, which means that the unnamed daughter of Lot, the girl tradition spent centuries demonizing, becomes part of the lineage that Christians believe brings a Savior into the world. So when I read this story, I do not see two immoral seductresses. I see two girls whose lives were shaped by tragedy, girls whose story was told by others, girls who were remembered in ways that served political arguments, theological agendas, and centuries of preaching. Girls whose story was told by their father, a man who had already shown himself willing to sacrifice them when danger came to the door, a weak man who offered his daughters to a mob without hesitation. So we have to ask questions. What would have stopped him from doing whatever he wanted to them, then sacrificing their name as well by telling the story in a way that blamed them? And that is why many women choose to listen to other women, because history has taught us something very clearly. When stories about women are told by men, the truth is often buried somewhere underneath the version that fits the male agenda best. So let me tell you what I think this story teaches us. It teaches us to be careful about who gets to tell the story. For thousands of years, stories about girls and women have been told almost entirely by men. And when men control the narrative, the language starts to change in ways that protect power. You've seen it before. A 12-year-old girl suddenly becomes a young woman in the headlines. A child is described in language that makes her sound older, more responsible, more complicit than she really is. They will say a 12-year-old woman, but you will never hear them say a 12-year-old man. The language shifts just enough to soften what really happened. And that is how blame quietly moves from the powerful onto the vulnerable. So when I read this story, I'm not just asking what happened in that cave. I'm asking who told the story, because I know I am not the only woman who reads it and stops and says, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. I'm sorry, but I don't believe Lot. His character in the story is questionable at best. And that is one of the lessons I take from this text. When a story about women or girls doesn't sound right, we stop and we question it. Because let us not forget, these were girls. So we will question it. We will point out the nonsense when we see it. We will call trauma what it is. We will call tragedy, tragedy. We will call abuse, abuse. And we will believe the victims. We will not quietly accept the version of stories that protect powerful men while blaming the vulnerable. We will name it, we will challenge it, we will put those narratives on blast. And yes, I know it may sound repetitive when I say these things in a sermon after sermon, but if it takes saying it 100 more times, then I will say it 100 more times. Because it is time to stop listening only to the stories men have told about women and girls and start listening to what women themselves have been trying to tell us all along. I don't believe Lot. And neither should you. And that's today's Auntie Sermon.
That was, thank you again so much. Man.
That was awesome.
That was powerful.
Thank you. Thank you so much, you guys. You guys are so sweet. I was talking to my friends Tahir and Schley and Sunny about it this week when I was writing it, and Schley was like already on it. She was like, I don't believe this story, and I was like, she already knows where I'm going with this because I don't believe it either. I never always thought that story was very suspicious.
I agree.
Yeah, that was a TED Talk, huh, Ashra?
I think you nailed it. How long did
I
it
feel
take
like you
to
did
write
it perfectly.
Sorry.
Sorry. So I was gonna say, I think you nailed it perfectly. I genuinely think that this was a cover-up story. This may have been one of the OG, most ancient cover-up stories for how a man impregnates his own daughters. Um, Also, a funny but disturbing thought that came to me is Lot is a baby daddy squared. He's a baby daddy for the second power. He is both their daddy and their baby daddy.
That's true. That's true. You know, and sometimes after I write these, I think of other things that I could have said, and I really, man, there's so much I could say, but like, Moab means what did like I want to make sure I put it the right way, but Moab means like from the father or something like that. That's kind of suspicious, don't you think?
And I think it's actually
I did say, but
interesting. My mind was blown whenever you laid out how Jesus technically has ancient Moabite heritage through Ruth, through Lot's lineage. Yep. And I'm thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, like that is that. Oh my gosh, there's so many issues with that. Yeah, the purity culture aspect of the Moabites and the Edomites and the Amorites, they were all so wicked and da 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 da. Well, evidently not, because God incarnate came from their lineage.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me change the background for us. So what were you saying, Ed, earlier? I'm sorry. You wanted to say something and Godwin wanted to say something.
Oh no, I was just once again being appreciative of this like perspective on it. It's one of those things where, you know, I only see things on one side of the door, and having that opened up and like kind of seeing that viewpoint that you're able to give it is just amazing. Like it really is inspiring. So thank you, if anything.
Yeah, I think Robin nailed it. I couldn't say it better. I did want to know, how long did it take you to write this? Because this had a lot of information in it.
It takes me, well, you know, it just depends on the story, but I do a lot of research, and I include those in my show notes on the podcast. But this one probably took me about 10 to 12 hours to write.
I would love
and
to know
that's not
what
including
scholars
the
think.
research.
That's actually not much. I thought it was going to take you far longer. So, you know, hats off to you for that. I wonder what scholars would think of that. You know, if they would agree or even give more information about what they know. I would be interested in, you know, maybe there's a few of them out there that you could probably contact. I don't know. I was just impressed.
Bert listens to a lot of mine, and I do consider Rabbi Bert to be a scholar. But he loves my sermons, actually. he really enjoys them. So and Rabbi Hana is also a scholar, and she has listened to my sermons. And while they will often tell me what rabbis think or what but they also realize I already know, because I've already read into the Midrash and looked up a lot of the rabbinical teachings. What I'm doing is considered Midrash. I am wrestling with the text, and I do when you see the stories these rabbis give, like we talked about Lot's wife this week, right? And one of the stories that the rabbis give about Lot's wife is that the reason she was turned into a pillar of salt is because she went to the neighbors to borrow salt. And when she did, she told them that they had guests at their house, and that's how everybody found out, and that's why a mob came to her house, because she was trying to be sneaky and let people know. And so that was her. None of this is in the text. This is all just made up stuff that they thought about later. Right. If you don't know what I'm fucking talking about, don't make comments, okay? Because you came in not even fucking knowing what I was talking about, and no, what I'm saying is not false. This is in the Midrash. That's what my claim was, but you weren't listening, so you just came in going, no, that's false. Anyway, none of that is in the story. But when rabbis do Midrash, they speculate. They talk about what could have happened. And so that's all I'm doing. I'm talking about what is more likely. You know what I mean? And I'm sorry, but men who are really fucking drunk, you're going to tell me you're so drunk you can get an erection and not know that you're fucking somebody at all? Because he would have to not think he is even fucking somebody. Because if he realizes he's fucking somebody, he has to know it's his daughter because they're the only two other people there. That story doesn't fly with me.
Even if you were blackout
I think
drunk,
a lot.
even if you were blackout drunk,
Yeah.
and you had like a wife or whatever, and like you were just like so out of it. Let's remember that this was in a fucking cave. There's no way that he would have not realized, you know what, I'm not at my house right now. Like this is like this
Right?
doesn't make any damn sense. Like if you know that the only people that you're in a cave with are your daughters, then there's no excuse. It was obviously intentional. Because you can't tell me that he was just laying there on the fucking cave floor and having his daughters do all the work.
It won't let me change my background again. I hate that. I don't know why it's doing that.
That is weird.
Yeah, I just don't buy the fucking story. I don't know, and all these stories I don't buy actually, but this one I specifically don't buy. This
No, it's
one
just weird.
specifically.
There's like such an ancestral like background to Jesus then, and with God knowing everything, would still claim that Jesus is so pure and everything like that. Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Well, the Christians will tell you it's because God is trying to show you that he can even use the most broken of people. That's their apologetics for that. We'll bring up Paul and see if he's still here, see what he wanted to talk about. He is not here. I'm not bringing you up. I don't really feel like talking to you. You're a bigot and a misogynist and probably a racist. I'm not sure about that, but probably.
And just as part of, you know, the other male on the panel, Godwin had a great idea earlier. Congratulations. We just want to apologize as much as we can. We know it's not our job to, but we are sorry that you guys have to go through this.
Selah, you wouldn't know scripture if it smacked you in the face. I love when people make these like weird. She has a wicked spirit. I have a wicked spirit. Look how wicked I am. So wicked. She has a wicked spirit. No normal unbelievers take time to distort scripture, nor do they think about God. No. First of all, I don't distort scripture. So that would be your first mistake, is thinking that that's what I do. And second of all, if you think no non-believer, ooh, that is so pretty. Thank you. If you think no other non-believers are talking about this God, are learning about your God, are teaching other people about the truth about your weak, impotent, fake God, then you're sadly mistaken. We are everywhere. And we are growing by numbers every day. Every day. You can't stop it. Your church is dwindling.
I was just gonna say, I think it's an intentional move on the writer's behalf of the story itself to omit the names of Lot's daughters. Like a lot of characters
Yes.
in the Bible, if they wanted to, if they didn't even know the daughters' names and they wanted to make up a name like how we know that they often did, they could have done that, but they intentionally chose not to. This is an erasure of their identity on purpose. The purpose being that
absolutely.
we're intentionally trying to brush their identity to the side, just like how you mentioned earlier, their age. These were girls; these were not women. The details about the personal details about them are intentionally brushed over, glossed over, for the sake of being able to control the narrative from a man's point of view, which is how the text is written from a man's point of view.
Yep. Will this be on your podcast? Yes, it will be. Episode 5 dropped this week. It's a great episode. It's a great episode. Just saying, the song "Consent" is a part of the episode. It's a great episode. And we are going in order, but I missed a chunk of women in Genesis. So I'm hurrying to write this so I can drop some bonus episodes on the podcast and I can release my new Auntie Sermon companion color workbook that's for decentering and deconstructing. So it's really cool. I really like it. I will never ever bring you up on my panel when you fucking demand to be brought up. I do not take commands from men. You're in the wrong fucking live if you think that you telling me to bring you up is going to get you up on my panel. You want up now? You send me $10. That's the only way you get up here, Truth. You could pay. I'm not running. I just don't take commands from men. The minute you tell me to do something, you're a man. I know to do the exact opposite thing.
This is Cecilia in the comments. If Christ has already won and he's so great and doing all this shit, how come Sky Daddy hasn't come back down with the fucking cigarettes and eggs yet? We've been waiting 2K plus years.
I know.
This shit's taking 5 ever. He needs to hurry his ass the fuck up. We might as well. I know that you Christians want to start Armageddon as soon as possible because you are morally bankrupt and fucking weirdos. But please, you can keep your condemnation to yourself, sweetheart.
Exactly. Hey, Truth Teller, welcome to the show. Can I get your age for TikTok purposes?
Oh, I am 64.
Okay, and are you a Christian or a believer of the God of the Bible?
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
I find it quite absurd. I find it not only absurd, but quite sadistic. That scripture is quite sadistic. I did want to kind of cheerlead you on for a moment because you said how you might sound like a broken record or you might say these things more than once. But there is a push in this country on the far right. We already know they want to take away the right for a woman to control their own bodies. And I say that is a right that belongs to women, should always belong to women. But I've heard folks on the right actually say they don't think women should have the right to vote.
No, they
that
don't.
The men, the husband represents the family and he can vote for the family. And if she don't have a husband, hey, there's always an uncle, a brother. And these are a real push. I even heard on one Christian Live, and they're talking about this like this is a serious issue. He's going something like, yeah, I think part of the problem, these women have these jobs, that they're not supposed to have. Jobs that put them in charge. This is not what God wants. This is a problem I think this is one of the problems in our society. And so these are some serious men. They want to take us backwards. And they want to take your rights away. So I say, Crystal, you say it once, twice, 10 times, 100 times, 500 times, whatever it takes, because we should not go backwards. We should not go backwards. I'm with you, sister.
Thank you very much. And I really want people to understand something. And if you don't understand this, please, everybody, educate yourself. The 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 fact that there is such a strong push against trans rights is misogyny. It is the patriarchy. That is what that's about. That is about taking away women's rights to vote too. The reason they're doing that is because they know that women are the number one people in our country whose driver's license does not match their birth certificate. So when they write laws like that and they say it's about trans people, it's really an attack on women's rights to vote. If they can take away the trans right to vote, they will also take away the women's right to vote in the process. And you have to educate yourself on that. If you haven't noticed, every single time there's a trans issue, it is about a trans woman. You're not hearing them get upset that a trans man might walk into the wrong bathroom. You're not hearing about trans men being in sports. You're hearing about trans women. It's an attack on women. It always has been an attack on women. And their bigotry will not stop. They are going to continue to do this. And once they take away our right to vote, we will go back to not being able to own land, because then it will be only landowners can vote. And then we will go back to not being able to bank in our own names. We will not have credit cards in our own names. You guys, I was born when my mother finally was able to have a bank account in her name. That was in my fucking lifetime, you guys.
Yes, Crystal, that's a good point. Yes, it's not that long ago. And they really do want to take us backwards. There is a push. They really believe in their misogyny. And they believe it's God-given.
You're right, Asherah. People went to sleep in Kansas and woke up the next day having to turn in their IDs. Every trans person in Kansas had to turn in their IDs. There was even a person who never changed their gender marker. So there was no reason for them to have to return their ID, and Kansas still revoked it. Fuck Kansas. Fuck the patriarchy. Fuck these misogynists. And I am telling you something right now. If you love a woman and she is still involved in Abrahamic religions, send her my Auntie Sermons. Bring her here. Talk to her. Keep talking to her. Because once the women leave the church collapses. We are what's holding the church up. How many women do you know drag their husbands to church on Sunday morning? How many women do you know are the ones who clean the bathrooms, clean the church, fill the pews, answer the phones, run the outreach, are the ones on the prayer chain doing the gossip, but also, praying. But they are gossiping, but they also are praying. How many women take care of the people for their weddings, for their funerals, visit the sick? We get the women out of the church and we dissolve the church.
Who's going to remember the birthdays?
Go ahead.
And I'm speaking as a trans woman. There are many different laws that I could go into that are harming trans people that actively don't just harm trans people, they also harm women at large. But I think for some people, it takes illustrating a point in their mind. So I'm going to try and paint you a vivid image. There are women, biological women, cisgender women, women who are assigned female at birth and they live their lives as women that are tall, that have broad shoulders, that have a defined jawline, that might have short hair. And guess what? Those people get transvestigated when they go to public bathrooms as well. And they're often beaten, attacked, assaulted, going to the bathroom that is aligning with their birth assigned gender. But because of the transphobia that has seeped into our society, we've given people a pass for violence. It's disturbing. It's not just, I think what people fail to understand is yes, this harms trans women and trans people at large, but trans people, believe it or not, because we are such a small minority, we're not even going to be the people who are largely affected by it. And what I mean by that is it's going to affect more people who aren't trans than people who are actually trans.
Yes.
And a big part of the reason why we keep focusing on trans issues is because this is a distraction tactic. This is a divide and conquer tactic where the oligarchs and the people who are in power have intentionally tried to pin people in our society against each other as a distraction. There's a war going on right now in Iran. There's conflicts between China and Taiwan. There's Israel, Palestine. There's Russia, Ukraine. There's chaos and turmoil happening all over the world. There's the E-files. There's hunger, starvation, war, famine, G-side. You name it, everything is happening. It's an intentional distraction tactic to say trans people are bad, trans people are scary. Because trans people are not bad. We're not scary. We just want to exist. That's all we want to do. We want to exist and have the same rights as everybody else. That's the true trans agenda.
It's true.
You read my mind, Robin. I was thinking that same thing, and I was formulating, and I was essentially was going to say what you just said. It's a distraction. It's a scapegoat. Yes, I think you are correct. I was talking with my sister, and we have a mutual friend, and she's leaning way MAGA, and it was the way she was, and she was sending my sister this and that, and she was just seemed to be obsessed with trans, and my sister was just asking, where's this coming from? This is not a problem. The war is a problem. Bombing girls' schools is a problem. But it wasn't computing that she was so just trans this and trans that. And yes. So I think you are correct, Robin.
Also, a fun fact for anybody who's listening to this. You've been in the bathroom with trans people before. You've been in many different social situations with a trans person before. You just didn't know it because a lot of trans people blend in and look like everybody else. You can't tell that everybody that you look at is trans. That's not how any of this works. You would be shocked how often I go out into the world, and the only way that people would know that I'm trans is if I explicitly told them.
And don't you have, like, in the girls' bathroom, aren't there like separate stalls? You don't have your
Let me tell you something.
Right? You're all in your own little rooms.
You know what? Truth, I'm going to tell you something. I am going to be 60 years old in June, and I have never in my whole fucking life ever been afraid of a trans woman in the bathroom. And I've shared with many trans women the bathroom. Sometimes I knew, sometimes I didn't, but I know they exist, so they were there. I fear fucking cisgender men hiding in that bathroom. That's why I never go to a public bathroom by myself. And I always tell my friends, don't ever go to a public bathroom by yourself. And I have never allowed our children to ever go to a public bathroom by themselves. Not because I feared a fucking trans woman. It's because cisgender men rape women in bathrooms.
Yes, they are the danger. Yes. Yeah, it's not like cis women they want to take a peek at women. Like, this is the whole purpose. I want to peek at some women's breasts. No, you're right. It's the cis men that you got to worry about.
No man has ever had to dress like a woman in order to assault a woman. They do it in broad daylight all the time.
Yep.
You know, I'm gonna bring somebody up. Are you guys ready? I don't know what we're gonna do. Are you ready?
Oh boy. Okay.
I don't know what's going on.
Guys, I got a phone call that I've got to take. So I've got
Okay,
to jump down a few
True.
minutes,
Thanks for
but
coming out.
always a
Thank you
pleasure,
for coming up,
Crystal.
True.
Have a good
All right, have a good
See you,
day.
True.
Bye.
Hey, Ray. Welcome to the show. Can I get your age for TikTok purposes?
Yeah, of course. I'm 29.
Okay, and are you a Christian or a believer of the God of the Bible?
No.
Oh, okay. What you come up to talk about today?
Well, I guess what I should probably start with is I agree with Robin on that position that she mentioned earlier. But I guess to kind of help validate the trans experience somewhat, I'm sort of detrans, but it's a long story for my personal anecdote, so I'm not going to get into that unless you guys ask questions later. But what I've pretty much come to the conclusion of about this entire argument is that it's horse shit. And the reason why and also I want to touch on that thing that you mentioned earlier about the distraction tactic. Please don't let me forget about that. I've got a lot of information to unpack and I'm trying to do it really quickly. So how would I start? Well, you guys know how they always talk about like simulation that and simulation this and we live in the matrix and blah, blah, blah. But I think I figured out exactly what the medium is. So in media reporting, the FCC explicitly says that they cannot stop the, basically like, I'm not making a good point here. I'm sorry, guys. I keep stuttering back and forth. The FCC does not attack the media broadcasting like any news platform for reporting opinions. So Fox News is allowed to report opinions because they do not have to report facts. They're not held liable for reporting fake news. So all the bullshit about Trump saying that fake news is this and fake news that, he's not actually technically lying. And this is why I want you guys to hear my perspective on this, is that the media is allowed to lie, which means Fox News and all these Republican newscasts that platform all this shit, they're allowed to report bullshit. And you can actually look this up if you wanted to. Just Google it. Does the FCC mandate the truth, that only the truth is allowed to be reported publicly? No, you're allowed to report opinions. Secondly, we are all cyborgs. You just don't realize it. You're carrying a small augmentation in your pocket all the time. You are non-invasively integrated with your technology already in the form of a smartphone. They didn't have to plug us into anything. We pay for a monthly subscription to the Matrix, and we don't realize that. Because they're allowed to curate information. Remember how they didn't let the slaves learn how to read? Well, they don't give us the full truth about any story. Remember when that president from Venezuela was just fucking abducted? Well, the news reported on the attack, the airstrikes that happened for about a day, and then we found out the following day on the following news cycle that the president of Venezuela was abducted. They have us looking up somewhere else while they grab us by the you-know-what downstairs. Another thing, too, is what I've found is that in every culture across the globe, throughout all of human history, there have been people that have been non-binary or did not associate with their sexual identity. That is a solid fact. It is well documented. In fact, even when the Greeks showed up in Egypt and occupied them, they explicitly said, just don't have sex with them. It's fucking documented. It's written down. Okay, anyway, moving on forward from that. We think of ourselves as like these hyper intelligent, whatever kind of creatures you want to think about. But your conscious awareness, who you are, is the amalgamation of your lived experiences. And so to get into this on a more technical basis, the odds of any individual being born with their specific particular genetic makeup is 1 to 16 trillion. And so you are very lucky to have ever been born at all with your particular phenotypes and who you are as a person. And that calculation does not even account for your lived experiences. Did you go left on Tuesday the 24th in 2003? Who knows? Maybe you went right. So it goes down into quantum physics. I'm not going to keep going on because I'm not a physicist, but this is just information that I've learned in order to explain this kind of thing. So what we are, if we're just apes with hyper-intelligent brains that are essentially self-assembling computers, then it would also be safe to say that who you are and what you know about the world around you is completely reliant on your lived experiences, as mentioned. So if you are actually not just the cosmetic human that people see every day, what you look at in the mirror, You're actually a cluster of nervous tissue housed in the skull of a great ape. Okay? So they didn't have to plug us into the matrix. Your brain simulates the environment around you using everything that it can in terms of perception. Taste, touch, smell, sound, and physical sensation. Your brain is simulating your environment using your sensory information. Your brain is a transducer. You are transducing the environment around you to have a subjective, lived human experience. And so throughout your life, you don't realize it. You blink and now you're an adult, right? So we don't notice little changes here and there, which is exactly how they've been able to keep us distracted so that we continue to argue about these controversial politics, even though there is a very minimal genetic variance between every human across the globe. So what makes us different is our lived experiences in terms of culture, the language that you speak, the country that you live in, nation of origin, all the stuff that's obvious and right in front of us, right? Basically, we're all like clones of one another, and you start out as a blank slate, and then you develop into this individual. And your subjective experiences is how you individuate or how you kind of mutate away from the pack. I'm continuing to like... I'm continuing to talk, but it's only because I'm nervous. I don't really do this all the time.
That's okay.
This is really
That's okay.
interesting stuff, Ray. I didn't want to interrupt, but I did want to chime in and just say, and I'm not being rude, but I think you've gotten a lot of points out, and I want to know, where are we landing the plane? Because I'm very interested.
Where I'm landing the plane is like this. The biggest threat, and I'm telling you this from like a place of full-on sincerity, because we've seen how they dealt with things during COVID. We've seen how they're dealing with this situation with Iran right now. And to like, if we're going to get political here, if I have to bring up politics, like nuclear power manufacturing is the most powerful method of energy manufacturing that we have as a species. We are burning coal right now to generate power. So the way that people talk shit about nuclear energy, our parents and grandparents were conditioned by who knows what, the fossil fuel industry or whatever, to think that it is dirty and unsafe. I know meltdowns have happened, but sometimes shit happens when you're trying to develop a new technology that could literally fucking power the planet. So what I'm trying to say here is that like fossil fuels, millions and millions and millions of hazardous material ejected into the atmosphere, but nuclear power doesn't do any of that. We could have a fucking utopia. I'm being quite frank here. So the point that I'm trying to make here is
right.
What I'm saying is that like you and I are only here and we're only in the middle of this chat on a fucking TikTok live for whatever reason, because somebody helped your mother deliver you into this world. So we evolved to cooperate with one another as a species, just to start off with. And we've been literally separated, like what Robin was saying earlier. We've been separated by polarized controversy, despite the very minuscule differences between every single person on the planet. And as far as I can tell, like genetics, like that what it gives you a cosmetic difference. Anyway, yeah. The point being that I'm trying to say here is the biggest threat to our species is not transgender people or immigrants. It's fucking big ass rocks from space, bro. Kinetic bombardment. It's happened. Okay, don't believe me? Do you don't think dinosaurs are real? Is that why people have that kind of controversy? Dinosaurs aren't real? Is that why they like to say the Earth is flat? Because they don't want people to know that big rocks from space can happen, and we don't have a single freaking way to stop it. There's one that might be coming in 2029. It's called Apophis. If it hits the West Coast, which is what it's predicted to possibly, if it ever hit at all, it's a very, very small chance. But this is what Neil Tyson has even said. Neil Tyson said it's not going to hit, but if it did, quote unquote, it would hit off the coast of California. It would cavitate the water. The water would collide back into itself and create a series of tidal waves that would wipe out the West Coast and even affect Asian nations. So where I'm trying to go with this is we need to be cooperating. We need to be pooling resources. We need to stop arguing about bullshit. We are both one of 8 billion and one of one simultaneously. And as far as I can tell, creationism, evolution, who gives a fuck? It's two sides of the same coin. Science is what fueled spiritual means of documenting what the world is like. And it was shared and passed down via word of mouth until the point where someone figured out how to have a written notation. Following that, we had all of these advancements in technology. Yeah. In fact, I don't know if you guys have heard this before, but they think that in ancient Egypt, ancient Egypt was studying ancient Egypt. There are two different kinds of ancient Egypt. There's pre-dynastic and dynastic. There's technology there are examples of pottery found at the base of the step pyramid of Djoser, which is the oldest one chronologically. It has been constructed within 1/1000th of an inch of geometrical perfection. Their technology gets worse as time goes on. And the dynastic Egyptians were trying to inherit the culture of the pre-dynastic Egyptians. So that means something happened to them. And who knows what it was. Those pyramids are older than people think, and they're getting older and older every day. Another example, in 2014, we thought Homo sapiens, Homo sapiens were 40,000 years old. As time has gone on, 50,000, 70,000, 100,000, 300,000, 500,000 and counting. 2 days ago,
I saw the latest being 600,000.
Nope. Yes. 2 days ago, I saw a report. 774,000 years. They found human remains in Morocco. 774,000 years old, and protected by sediment and things like that. I'm not an archaeologist. I just remember information pretty good.
Where's the plane landing?
And here's the thing.
Plane landed a while ago, but I didn't stop talking. The plane landed a while ago, but I didn't stop talking.
It would be great if we all just got together. But when we are talking about people literally wanting to eradicate trans people and the LGBTQIA, they want them dead.
Yes.
I'm not going to stop talking about it. It won't happen because we cannot unite as people if we're talking about wiping each other off the planet. How do we unite if you're going to kill me? Oh, you went mute. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I accidentally tapped my thingy. What I completely agree with you. To me, ever since 2016, when Trump first said this bullshit about Mexicans and whatever the hell he said, the instant that I heard that, my brain already went 2016, and it's just gotten worse from there. It's a distraction tactic, and if we want to get into other terms, I can get really weird with you guys.
I need to drop Crystal.
Okay, wait, hang on one second, Ray. Okay, Godwin, thank you so much for coming up. Ashra, I think you wanted to say something. And Ashra and Jerry Bell, you both say what you have to say, but I have to step away for 1 second. I'll be right back, okay? You guys go ahead and talk.
Hey, I just wanted to say Reagan ruined everything. I don't know how many people are here that are probably over 50-ish. If you can remember in the 80s, Reagan was doing all kinds of things. I think he was maybe like the first president that the Heritage Foundation went after hardcore, or maybe they were just much more organized at that time or something. But one of the things that he did, and keep in mind, this is before the 24-hour news cycle. In the 80s, he signed some kind of law or bill, or I don't know what the heck it was, but he made it so that news stations no longer had to report both sides. I remember growing up and I remember hearing a news story and you hear it sometimes now, but not as much as I did growing up. You would hear a news story and they would say, well, we tried to contact so-and-so, or they would say, we do have a comment from this company or whatever. Like, they would literally present both sides. They don't do that anymore. And it's because of Reagan. And, so yeah, that's part of the reason why we have such crappy quote unquote news and why it can be also termed entertainment when it really shouldn't be.
Thank you for
Yeah, I
that,
vaguely
Ashra.
remember that because I'm 61, so I vaguely remember that. And I think around that same time, this is just a fun fact. I remember them saying, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? Do you remember that? And people wrote in and said that it really bothered them because some people didn't know where their kids were, and they said it was very upsetting. And so I remember them saying they had to quit doing that, but that doesn't really have anything to do with what you're talking
I do remember that. And I remember being like, it's so late. Like, who are you reminding right now? Whose kids are out right now? Maybe
Yeah,
teenagers, but yeah.
Yeah, and I just remember them saying, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are?
Crystal, I was just talking about Reagan for a little bit, so you missed that.
Fuck Ronald Reagan. Fuck Nixon. Fuck George W. Bush Sr. Fuck Bush Sr. and Jr. You know what? I don't think that there's been a Republican president we've had in the last century I care for.
Exactly. And Reagan did start it. He started all that. And so he started the, ruining our country, with the trickle down economics. So I definitely do remember that. I just had no idea.
I
it was
fell
gonna
for
turn
that
into this.
bullshit. I fell for that bullshit. I was such a
I did
fucking
too.
Christian conservative. You guys would all hated me. I believed in trickle down economics. What do you mean a person would get that rich and not send that money downward? What do you mean?
Exactly. They're going to be billionaires. Of course they're going to share it with us.
Right? Who the fuck wouldn't? Right? What the
That's
fuck?
so
Bunch of evil
delusional.
motherfuckers. I was very delusional. Listen, when you're indoctrinated like that from when you're a kid, those are the things you hear, and you're hearing them from the people you trust the most. So why wouldn't they be true? You know?
Exactly. You trust them, and you don't have anyone else really telling you anything else.
No, because your whole entire life is that shit, right? Your parents' friends are that. That's who they let you hang out with. That's who you see all the time. You live in little communities that are waspy,
Yeah, I never even heard of debating until I was like a junior or senior in high school. I didn't even know what that meant, that you show both sides and then you decide. I just heard
I
one
thought
side
debating
all the
was
time.
stupid. I thought, why would people just want to sit around and debate shit? That's stupid.
Yeah, I
Who
didn't
knew?
understand it at all. I just thought I already know everything I need to know, and I'm right because my parents told me I was right.
Yeah.
And I was dumb.
I'm very lucky that I had the father that I had growing up. My father was not a perfect man, but he instilled an interest in politics into me at a very early age. He was that kind of man that read the newspaper every single morning. And he would not just read the newspaper, he would read the newspaper while listening to the news. And then sometimes he would get distracted and then read the news on the TV that was distracting him from reading the news in the newspaper. So
Oh my
he
God.
definitely, yeah, I know, it's so bad. He definitely
Where did you grow
watched,
up?
Missouri.
Missouri.
Well,
Okay.
I spent my childhood in Texas, so I could have said that I could have said Texas, but I've spent most of my life in Missouri. I've lived in the country cities and suburbs here, but I spent my childhood specifically in Texas. But yeah, my dad would watch Fox News, but he would also watch MSNBC, and he didn't watch Fox News because he believed what they were saying. He wanted to know what his opposition was saying, and he was like, Robin, you shouldn't just watch watch the side that agrees with you. You should educate yourself about what people you don't agree with are saying, because if you know your opposition, if you know what your enemy is saying, essentially, then you can know how to counter what they're going to say. It allows you to be prepared.
Yeah, but if we had been taught that growing up, we could have learned from each other and learned how to resolve problems together. As a society, we haven't learned how to do that. And now we have all these barriers in the way that we have to break down and figure out how to get past so that we can get, back to the point where we can, talk with each other again. And I mean, I guess you could say it's debate, but how about like this? Just have a freaking conversation and learn from each other.
Yeah, I agree.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, as we can tell by a lot of the Christians that come up here, they don't know how to have civil conversations. They center
No,
themselves in
they don't.
every quote unquote conversation that they have because they don't view the interaction as being worthwhile unless they get something out of it because they're inherently selfish people. And it's not just Christians. This is a broader issue to our society in general. People don't have conversations anymore just to converse. They have it with an agenda.
It's
And they
true.
live their
Well,
life in
also,
fear.
people
So
are.
if they're not right, go ahead.
I was just going to say, probably what you're about to say, is that people are taught too that there is something morally wrong with being wrong. And so they can't admit they're wrong because there's something morally wrong with that. And if we would start teaching people that that's not a moral thing, that means that you need more education, you need more information, and that it is actually it's valuable to say I am wrong. I made a mistake here. When I was writing that sermon that I wrote about the daughters, when I first started writing the sermon, I did start to think about how the rabbis in the Midrash talked about these girls probably thought their whole world had been destroyed. I wrote most of the sermon thinking that. And then as I continued in the sermon, I realized, wait a minute, they couldn't have thought that. Even if the rabbis say that, they couldn't have thought that because they went to Zor. They knew the whole world hadn't been destroyed. And I almost didn't correct it, but I was like, no, I want to correct that. I think people should know that that is a fallacy, that these girls thought the whole world was destroyed. I don't care that rabbis hundreds of years ago said that. That's not what the text says. The text shows us that they knew there was civilization, at least in Zor. Okay? So I had to correct myself. I had to fix that. I want to tell the truth. I want to be honest. I want us to learn things that are true, right? And we, for some reason, I'll get men up here, especially men, I'm just telling you, who cannot say, I was wrong. Ross Soul is one of them. He is trying to be better. You could tell that he wants to start just really being honest, but it is so hard for him to admit when he's wrong. And the same with Bitter Truth. Somewhere along the line, some man told him that being wrong was a weakness. And because of that, they can't say it.
At some point, though,
you can't learn true things.
I mean, it just seems like they could identify justifying what they're saying when they know it's wrong. Like when you bring up a point and you say, this is what the Bible actually says. And then they just go into this further, deep hole of, and then they end up with, well, if God said it, I have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I hear a lot of justifying on the debates and I see those same people in a lot of different, debates because they just cannot fathom opening their mind and seeing a different perspective for just a second, and then if they could just actually think to themselves, what if I'm wrong? I mean, not actually admit that they're wrong. Just say those words. What if I'm wrong? I've done that a lot. It's helped me so much to just stay open,
It's funny too because they will come up and they'll say, well, I don't really want to talk to you because I can tell that you're not open-minded and nothing is going to change your mind. What are you talking about? I was a Christian for 40 years. Something changed my mind. I'm not the one who has a problem changing my mind. Apparently you are, because I've been a Christian. I spent 40 years in that, and something changed my mind. So obviously I'm not that person that, has a problem with that.
Yeah. And if I'm face to face with somebody, I will just say, look, I know this is where you're at in your journey, but please respect where I'm at in my journey too, because I've I've actually been where you are and something happened to me, so you have to respect that. I just not beg them, but I just, you know, implore, I guess, just really ask for that consideration, and
Yeah.
I I have this saying that I learned a while back, and when somebody says something to you that you really haven't had time to process, you just say back, I hear you and I promise to weigh it carefully. And it just means I promise
I
to
like that.
think about that on my own, in my own quiet. And, it's amazing what you can do when you really process what somebody else says. And if they're not standing right in front of you, it's a lot easier to say, I think I was wrong. I think after I really thought that through, I was wrong. And I really need to change my perspective and the way that, I talk to people or whatever, whatever comes out of it, it just
Yeah.
happens as a way to, when you're processing what they've said, and you just expect other people. I think it's okay to expect other people to do the same. So me and my son do it. And, when we disagree, I say, will you just promise to weigh it carefully and think about it, and then we can pick up and talk about it later, something like that.
Yes, it is quite dishonest, Nini, when they say things like that. And I will be up here having the best time with you guys, and we'll be talking and laughing like this. Robin can tell you, I have so many comments from Christians immediately going, look how angry she is. She's so angry. What are you talking about? I'm not even angry right now. Trust me, you will know when I'm angry. Not be confused.
I know. Most of the time when you're talking, you have a smile on your face. I mean,
right? They're like, she's so angry. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Ashra, thank you for coming up. You guys, I am migrating my merch store. I have a merch store right now. If you want iconic things, Abelina ballerina things and so forth, I have a merch store. I am migrating it to a different company, and it's going to take me probably about a week before it'll be done. And when I do, Ashra has made the cutest Abelina ballerina graphics for my merch. It is so cute. So you guys will have to, make sure you're following me or whatever, and I'll announce it when the new store opens, but you'll have to check it out. You are?
Cool.
I hope you're not working too hard, Ashra. I'm going to be finishing up here in the next 5 minutes. If you want to come up and say anything or talk or whatever, come on up. I will be, unless we meet our gift goal, but I don't think we're going to, and that's okay. The gifts are never expected. They're always appreciated. We are 30-something% on my way to the computer, and I am selling things, and I will be popping up some videos so you can see what I have sold and how much further that gets us towards the new PC. But I have finally fixed the sound problems over on YouTube, so that's good. Hopefully YouTube, you guys are enjoying the clear, crisp sound you're getting instead of that weird reverb shit that was happening. But like every time you gift me, what I do is I get paid out on that once a week from TikTok, and it's usually like, $30 or so. When I do get that money, I take that money and I put it right towards the PC. So you'll see that go up and up and up. And when you guys tip me or do anything like that, that goes towards it too. Sometimes though, if you send me like a kick gift or something sometimes I just buy myself lunch, okay? Because I like tacos. Do you blame me?
no, I love tacos.
I like tacos.
What I like
live
more
in
than tacos, though, is
California.
enchiladas.
I had
do
taco
like
salad when I
enchiladas,
broke my
too.
fast. I love
Oh,
taco
you
salad.
did? Oh, God, I love taco salad. I love enchilada. Mexican food. Oh my God. If I could only eat one type of food for the rest of my life, and I think I already do it anyway, it's Mexican food. I think I have Mexican food every day in some form or fashion. I love Mexican food. And I don't give me Tex-Mex. That is not Mexican food, okay?
I like I said earlier, I spent my childhood in Texas. I do love me some Tex-Mex. It's not the same thing. It's different, but I do love me some Tex-Mex. I kind of would have to agree
I
with
will
you. If
eat
I had to pick
Tex-Mex.
another culture's cuisine that I would have to eat every single day, I I think I could do Mexican food, but I would have to learn about Mexican food that isn't inherently spicy. Because I feel like if I
Oh,
would
there's a
get
lot.
older, I feel like if I would get older and I would get like sensitive acid reflux, I'd have to mind the
Yeah.
spiciness.
And
Hey,
you know,
I was gonna tell you
go ahead,
because you
Jerry.
were talking about how cool your dad was and how he tried to show you both perspectives. I never really commented on that, but that's really interesting that your dad did that. My parents, just took me to church and we just watched one channel for our news. They never explained to me in any way on how to see both sides or how important the other side was. And so I just wanted to tell you, I kudos to him.
Thank you, Cherry Bell. That means a lot. I appreciate that. And
Sure.
yeah, I have a lot of memories growing up sitting down and watching the news with my dad. It was something that we did a lot. You know, this may sound kind of dark to say, because I love my dad and I wish that he was still here with us, but I think my dad would be very disturbed at the black mirror world of politics that we've entered into. Um,
Mm.
so that's my way of saying, I'm glad in a sense that my dad never got to see all of this evil, awful shit that was going to happen because I think he would be very distraught by it if he was still around today.
My parents would blame me personally. So there's that. And they're the ones who raised me to be a conservative Christian. But when they got older, they flipped just like I did. And so then they got mad at me that I was the daughter that they raised me to be. They were like really, really mad about that. And I couldn't understand it because I was like, how are you mad at me? This is the way you raised me. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand. And like, I kind of get it now, but my children, if they were conservative Christians still, they are not. If they were, though, I wouldn't be mad at them. I wasn't mad at Doug when he still was because I'm the one who brought them all kicking and screaming to be conservative Christians. How could I be mad at them for being what I taught them, right? Like I never understood their anger with me over being exactly who they wanted me to be.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
listen, there was a
I
reason
totally get
I was exactly. I had been abandoned by my first mother, so when I came into their family, I wanted to be so perfect that they would never reject me, right? So when they put on this big conservative Christian front, I was like, okay, I'm going to be the most conservative and the most Christian. Then these people will love me forever and they won't abandon me. And then my God won't abandon me. So then I'll make sure I'm like really in with the big dude upstairs, really in with the new parents. And then they've changed and they became more and more liberal. And then they were mad at me instead of saying, hey, we know we brought you up this way, but we learned some things and we want to talk to you about it. Instead, they were just mad all the time. They just could not stand me. It was just so much anger. It was very difficult because I felt like I never could please them, like growing up. And then when I moved out, it was like, I don't know how to make you happy. And then eventually I realized, fuck, I don't have to do that. I don't have to make people happy.
But it does affect you when adults let you down, and when after we do grow up and we realize, that we can make our own decisions and we're not just spoon-fed information anymore, it easier, but still when you're in the situation where you're trying to please those people, it is a big letdown when they just keep looking down on you and you're just never good enough. It's the basic message,
Yeah, that was the basic message.
hmm
You guys, I can somebody tell me who's live? I want to go raid somebody. I'm going to end it for today. I will not be here tomorrow. Is Friday. But you know when I will be here? Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, right here. And I will have Robot Go and Rat Soup. Benny is live. Let's all go raid Benny and tell him Crystal loves him. And Robin, thank you so much for being here. And Jerry, thank you so much for being here. And everybody who came up and everybody who tapped, everybody who shared, everybody. You guys are amazing.